Beneath the endless sky of an ancient land, the earth still whispers its first songs. Here, every breeze carries memory of spirits, of stories, of dreaming long before dawn. You are welcome in this quiet space of wonder. If these sacred night journeys speak to you, subscribe and share where you're listening from, and what time it is where you dream tonight. Chapter 1: The Dreamtime before time, before the first sunrise. Before the first heartbeat of the earth, there was no sky, no sea, no separation. Only stillness, vast, endless, and aware. In this deep silence, something began to stir. A hum, a rhythm, a pulse that was neither born nor dying. It was not sound, not light, not movement. Yet from it, everything would emerge. This is what Aboriginal elders call the Dreamtime, a sacred state of existence where time is not a line but a circle, where every moment touches every other. The Dreamtime is both beginning and now, both creation and memory. It is the eternal dreaming of the land itself. For Aboriginal peoples, the dreaming is not a story of the past. It is the ongoing pattern of reality. The ancestors did not simply create the world, they became it. Their songs became mountains, rivers, clouds, and the breath of all living beings. Their movements carved the valleys and the paths that still guide people today. To understand this, we must leave behind the idea of time as we know it, the straight path from past to future. In the dreaming, everything that ever was, and everything that will be, already exists in sacred harmony. When people sing, dance, or tell stories, they are not remembering creation, they are participating in it. Across Australia's vast deserts and green coastlines, this belief weaves through every language and landscape. Different nations tell different stories, but all share this truth. The land itself is alive with spirit. Every rock, tree, and waterhole is a being with memory and presence. To walk through the bush is to move across a living tapestry of ancestral deeds. According to some traditions, in the beginning the world was soft, unformed. The ancestors awoke within it, great serpents, birdmen, emu women, and other beings of immense power. They sang as they moved, and the vibrations of their voices shaped the land. Mountains rose where their footsteps fell. Rivers flowed where they carved through clay and stone. The world gained color and form as each note found its place in the sacred song. These creation journeys are not myths to be doubted or proved. They are the foundation of being. The Dreamtime exists not in memory but in presence. To tell a dreaming story is to awaken the energy that sustains it. This is why ceremony, song, and art are acts of renewal. They keep the world breathing. In this worldview, creation never ended. It continues each moment through connection between people and land, ancestors and descendants, visible and invisible realms. The dreaming is the bridge between them, a thread that never breaks. For those who live by Jukapa, time is not a boundary. A person may dream of an ancestor not as a symbol, but as a meeting. A rock formation may be addressed as a relative. A gust of wind may carry the whisper of a story thousands of years old. To live within the dreaming is to understand that life is relational, a constant exchange of giving and remembering. Anthropologists have described this as one of the most sophisticated spiritual philosophies in the world, a complete system of cosmology, morality, and ecology. Yet for the people who inherit it, it is simply the way things are. There is no separation between sacred and ordinary, spiritual and material. The word Jukapa itself is complex. It means law, story, creation, and truth all at once. It governs how people interact with land and with each other. It tells them where they come from, where they may travel, what songs they may sing, what ceremonies they must perform. It defines belonging in a way deeper than ownership, a kinship with all existence. When the elders speak of the dreaming, they do so not as preachers or historians, but as custodians of living memory. Each story belongs to a place, and that place holds its power. To tell a story outside its land without permission would be like moving a root from its soil. It cannot grow elsewhere. This deep connection between land, language, and law forms the heart of Aboriginal spirituality. It is not about worshipping distant gods, but maintaining relationships with ancestral presences that dwell within the world itself. The ancestors are not gone. They are the water, the dust, the stars above, and the voice within the wind. Imagine, for a moment, standing in the desert at night. The stars shimmer with quiet precision, mirrored by the cool earth below. The air feels older than memory. Every sound, the crack of a twig, the hum of insects, becomes part of something larger. This is how it feels to stand within the dreaming, to sense that every moment is part of a vast and sacred rhythm across thousands of years. This understanding has shaped ceremonies and songlines, intricate pathways across the continent that trace the journeys of the first ancestors. These songlines are both maps and hymns, guiding travelers through deserts, mountains, and coastlines. A person can follow them by remembering each verse of a sacred song, each describing the next landmark along the way. The land itself becomes scripture, and to forget it would be to lose direction in both geography and spirit. Western thought often seeks a single moment of creation, a beginning from nothing. But in Aboriginal thought, creation is continual. The world renews itself through song, through ritual, through respectful action. When a person tends to their country, sings a song, or tells a dreaming story, they keep creation alive. The act of care is an act of genesis. This is why sacred sites are treated with reverence. They are not ancient ruins or memorials. They are living beings. Waterholes, cliffs, and caves are places where the dreaming still breathes through the skin of the earth. Offerings are made not to appease spirits, but to honor the ongoing balance between human and land. Modern listeners may find this view poetic, even symbolic, but for the first peoples of Australia, it is as literal as the sunrise. The dreaming is the architecture of existence. The earth remembers every step taken upon it. To truly understand this is to sense the humility it requires, a recognition that humanity is not the center of creation, but one strand in its endless weaving. It invites reflection. If the land itself is a living relative, how do we care for it? How do we listen when it speaks through drought, or flood, or silence? In the Dreamtime, stories are not owned but entrusted. They are held by custodians, passed carefully across generations. A single myth might take days to tell, and each telling must be exact, for the words themselves carry creative power. To change a line is to shift the shape of the world. In paintings and carvings, the dreaming continues. Dots and lines are not decoration, but cartography, coded maps of sacred geography. Each pattern is both art and theology, describing where spirit beings traveled, where they rested, where they transformed into the land. There is no divide between religion and environment, because one cannot exist without the other. The dreaming binds all forms of life into a single system of reciprocity. To take from the earth is to owe it care. To speak of a place is to be responsible for it. For tens of thousands of years, this knowledge has been preserved not in books, but in memory, ceremony, and silence. And through colonization and disruption, it still survives, held in the songs and languages that endure. Each time it is spoken aloud, even quietly, the dreaming stirs again. To listen to these truths is to hear the world differently. It is to realize that every sound, the wind, the water, your own breath may be part of something ancient and ongoing. The dreaming before time is not gone. It is here, beneath every moment, breathing through the spaces we forget to notice. When you close your eyes tonight, you may sense a faint rhythm behind your heartbeat, a slow pulse that belongs not just to you, but to the world itself. And perhaps, in that stillness, you might wonder if creation never truly ended. Are we all still dreaming it together? Chapter 2: The Ancestors Who Sang the World. They say the world was once unshaped, a sleeping plain beneath an endless sky, silent and waiting. Then came the ancestors, beings of vast power and impossible form. Some slithered, some soared, some walked upright with hands that glowed like dawn. They were not gods in the distant, unreachable sense, but living forces of the dreaming itself. They sang, and the earth awoke. Across the emptiness they traveled, their voices weaving through the silence like wind over water. Each note carried purpose. Each breath carried design. Where their songs passed, rivers uncoiled, mountains rose, and the first fires burned. The world did not appear. It was sung into being. These ancient beings, serpents, emus, kangaroos, ancestral spirits of man and creature alike, were not separate from the land they shaped. Their bodies became its bones. Their resting places became its stones and ridges. The sound of their footsteps became thunder, and their sighs became wind. Aboriginal Australians believe that every part of the continent holds the memory of these first singers. Every dune, every waterhole, every whisper of breeze carries a trace of the songs they left behind. The dreaming, or jukapa, as it is called in many languages of the desert, is not a myth that ended. It is an ongoing melody, always present beneath the surface of life. To understand this is to see that the land itself is alive, conscious, remembering, and aware. To move through it is not merely to cross space, but to travel through time. The old songs still echo, faint but unbroken, in the call of the magpie, in the rustle of spinifex, in the low hum of wind through red rock dot. Each ancestral journey became what are now known as songlines. These are the invisible threads that stretch across Australia, mapping the continent in melody. They are not written maps, but sung ones, guiding travelers by rhythm, word, and sound. The songline tells not only direction, but identity. It links one generation to another, one tribe to the next, one heartbeat to the ancient pulse of creation. Anthropologists who studied these traditions often marveled at their precision. The songs describe landmarks, water sources, star patterns, and seasonal shifts, with remarkable accuracy, proof that memory can live in music as strongly as it lives in stone. But to the Aboriginal people, these were never just practical tools. They were sacred obligations. To sing the world was to keep it alive. Each performance was a renewal, a breathing of spirit back into the land in this worldview. Creation is not something that happened once and then ceased. It is sustained, moment by moment, through reverence, rhythm, and repetition. The dreaming continues as long as the songs continue. If they are forgotten, something deeper than memory fades, The harmony between people, place, and spirit begins to unravel. It is said that when a singer walks a songline, they do not walk alone. They walk beside the ancestors, repeating their words and retracing their footsteps. The rocks underfoot recognize them. The birds above listen. The world leans closer, remembering itself through their voice. This understanding that song maintains the structure of reality is both poetic and profoundly scientific in its own way. It hints at an ecological philosophy that predates writing by tens of thousands of years. The belief that human consciousness and the natural world are intertwined systems of sound and memory. For tens of millennia, these stories were passed from elder to child, not through books, but through performance. A ceremony might last for days, with dancers painting their bodies in ochre and charcoal, moving to the rhythm of clapping sticks and deep-voiced chants. Each gesture echoed the motion of an ancestor. Each note carried the weight of time. Through the songlines, the entire landscape became a living scripture. The sandstone cliffs of the Northern Territory tell of the Rainbow Serpent carving rivers through stone. The red sands of the Western Desert hold stories of two sisters who chased a snake across the stars, leaving trails of fire that became constellations. The coastlines remember beings who dove into the sea and emerged as turtles, dolphins, and coral reefs. In each version of the story, the moral remains constant. The land and the people are one. To care for the land is to care for the ancestors. To destroy the land is to silence the song. When Europeans arrived in Australia, they struggled to understand these beliefs. They saw no temples, no written doctrines, no hierarchies of gods. Yet the temple was everywhere, in the mountain that glowed at sunset, in the hidden waterhole that reflected the sky. The doctrine was the earth itself, encoded not in ink but in breath. Some modern scholars describe these systems as oral cartographies, networks of sacred geography that link ecology, astronomy, and theology in one seamless philosophy. But to Indigenous Australians, such terms barely touch the depth of it. The dreaming is not a concept to be studied. It is an experience to be lived. To sleep under the southern stars, to hear the hum of insects at dusk, is to be within the story, to feel that life hums along an ancient melody you did not begin, yet still participate in. Each time the songs are sung, the world is tuned again, like an old instrument brought back into harmony. In some regions, initiates are taught that even silence carries its rhythm, and that one must listen to the land to hear the next verse. Not every songline is meant to be known by all. Some are open and public, sung to the open sky. Others are sacred, whispered only by those entrusted with their care. The dreaming protects its knowledge through secrecy, a balance between revelation and respect. For modern listeners, the idea of a world sung into being may seem poetic, but it carries a practical wisdom. Sound is the binding force of community and continuity, just as music unites emotion and time. The dreaming unites people and place. When elders speak of the ancestors singing the world, they are not describing an event in distant history. They are describing the structure of existence, that all life vibrates, that every movement carries a note, and that harmony sustains creation. If you imagine standing upon that vast, red earth, no buildings, no lights, only the stars, you might begin to hear it. The low hum of life, endless, patient. The faint pulse of the old songs, still alive in the breath of wind. Perhaps you have felt it before, in your own way. The stillness just before dawn, when sound itself feels sacred. The sense that the world is awake and aware, even before you are, in Aboriginal cosmology. That awareness is the echo of the ancestors, the eternal singers whose voices have never fully faded. They are the invisible presence within every bird call, every rainstorm, every lull between waves. The world is not just seen, but heard, and as long as someone listens, the dream continues. Chapter 3. The Rainbow Serpent's endless coil beneath the red stillness of the Australian desert. Below the stones that have witnessed 1,000 ages, something eternal is said to move, unseen but never absent. It stirs in the quiet after rain, coils beneath riverbeds, glides beneath the sunlit dust. This is the Rainbow Serpent, Wanampi, Yurlungur, Nalyod, known by many names across hundreds of nations, but always recognized as the great living force of creation. For tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal peoples have told of this being, not as a single myth, but as a living presence that connects all cycles of life. The Rainbow Serpent is the river and the storm, the breath that awakens the land and the warning that follows when balance is broken. It moves between worlds, linking the surface and the deep, the seen and the unseen. In the Dreamtime, when the earth was still soft and unformed, the serpent awoke from its eternal sleep beneath the soil. As it began to move, the ground lifted and folded behind its coils, forming ridges and mountains. Where it slithered, valleys sank into being. When it paused to rest, its body formed waterholes and billabongs. Its path became the network of rivers that now nourish the continent. But the serpent was not only a shaper of land, it was the keeper of its rhythm, the force that brought rain to a thirsty world. When it rose into the sky, its scales caught the light, bending it into color. That is why, to this day, a rainbow stretching across a storm is seen as the glimmering body of the Ancient One, a sign that creation's spirit still flows through the earth. In Aboriginal cosmology, the Rainbow Serpent embodies the dual nature of all life. It gives and it takes. It nourishes, but it can destroy. Its gift is water, essential, sacred, and alive, yet that same water can flood, can drown, can remind those who forget that every blessing carries its own balance. In the northern regions, elders speak of Yurlungur, who guards the sacred waterholes. It watches over them, coiled and patient, allowing only those with respect to drink. If a traveler takes too much or disturbs the resting place without ritual, the serpent may rise its anger, expressed in storms or sickness. In Arnhem Land, Ingilyard is both mother and father, sometimes gentle, sometimes wrathful, forever watching. Her scales shimmer with every color, representing the unity of the natural world, sky, land, water, and spirit to the people of the desert. Where rain is rare and precious, the serpent's presence explains the mystery of life itself. When the first rains fall after long months of dryness, the earth awakens. Frogs sing, seeds burst open. Streams appear where none had been. In that renewal, one can almost sense movement beneath the soil, the serpent shifting again, its power circulating through the veins of the land. Anthropologists and mythologists who studied these traditions often tried to reduce the rainbow serpent to categories: fertility symbol, water deity, weather spirit. But those who grew up with the stories know it is something more profound. It is not a figure outside the world, but the pulse within it. The serpent's body is the pattern that holds creation together, a spiral, a flow, a cycle that never ends. Its story differs from region to region because the land itself differs. In some places, It is the father of all beings. In others, the mother who birthed the first people. Some tribes describe two serpents, one that brings life-giving rain, another that guards the underworld. In parts of Queensland, its battles with fire spirits explain the changing of seasons. Yet across every variation, one truth remains. The rainbow serpent is the embodiment of motion and transformation. Where it travels, life follows. To dream of the serpent, elders say, is to glimpse the heartbeat of creation. Those who encounter it in vision often speak of luminous color, of vastness beyond comprehension, and of silence, deep and knowing. It is not a creature in the ordinary sense, but the world itself, remembering its origin in the dreaming stories. Even humanity's moral laws are intertwined with the serpent's presence. The rules of respect toward land, toward life, toward community come from its example. The serpent reminds that balance is sacred. Take too much from the waterhole, and the world grows harsh. Forget the rituals of gratitude, and the rains withdraw. Many initiation ceremonies across Australia once included songs and dances that honored this being. Young men would paint their bodies with winding bands of color, red, yellow, white, black, and move in serpentine rhythm. Their voices, chanting in low, resonant tones, imitated thunder. As the rhythm deepened, they called the serpent forth, not as a literal appearance, but as a return of awareness, a remembrance of how creation first began. In some communities, sacred caves hold paintings of the rainbow serpent. These images are not decorative. They are living symbols, renewed generation after generation. Pigments of ochre and clay form sweeping lines that ripple like water. The serpent's head may face upward toward the clouds, or downward toward the deep earth. The direction varies, but its meaning is constant. The unity of above and below, the sky's rain and the ground's thirst. The colors of these paintings shimmer softly in firelight. Some are thousands of years old, layered over by countless hands. Each retouching is both art and prayer, an act of keeping the serpent's power alive. Modern researchers have traced the story of the rainbow serpent to some of the oldest continuous mythic traditions on Earth. Rock art in Kakadu National Park and the Kimberley region depicts snake-like beings that may date back more than 20,000 years. These images predate written language, yet they tell of a cosmology already mature, one that linked water, fertility, and moral order into a single worldview. It is extraordinary to consider that as glaciers retreated and continents reshaped, this story persisted. The same song that once echoed in the Pleistocene still whispers in ceremonies today. No empire, no invasion, no technology has erased it. The serpent still coils within memory, quiet but enduring. From a psychological lens, the rainbow serpent has been compared to archetypes found across the world, from the Hindu Ananta, the endless cosmic snake upon which Vishnu rests, to the Mesoamerican Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who brings rain and wisdom. Perhaps there is something universal about the serpent form, the symbol of continuity, transformation, and regeneration. It sheds its skin, yet remains itself. It circles upon its own tail, suggesting eternity. Across continents, it becomes the bridge between heaven and earth. But in Aboriginal cosmology, the meaning is more intimate. The serpent does not dwell in distant heavens. It moves within this world, right beneath our feet. It is not a myth to be remembered. It is a presence to be honored. Some elders teach that when lightning flashes, It is the serpent's tongue touching the clouds. When thunder rolls, it is the beating of its great heart. And when rivers overflow their banks, it is not destruction, but cleansing the world, being reborn. There are stories of those who disrespected its sacred places, who polluted a waterhole, or hunted without ritual, and was swallowed by the ground. Such tales are not told as threats, but as lessons. Everything alive depends on reciprocity. Take only what you need. Remember that every pool of water, every green leaf, is part of the serpent's body. In some regions, healers call upon its spirit to bring rain or to restore health. They see illness not as a curse, but as imbalance, a dryness of the soul, and the serpent's movement through dreams becomes a form of renewal. It teaches that healing, like rainfall, must come slowly and with reverence. The Rainbow Serpent story endures not because it is old, but because it remains true. Even in modern Australia, in cities, in art galleries, in classrooms, its image appears again and again. Sometimes stylized in bright paint, sometimes woven into songs that blend English and ancestral tongues. It is a reminder that the dreaming is not a myth frozen in the past. It continues, reshaping itself, just as the serpent reshapes the land, if one listens closely during a summer storm. When the air trembles and the scent of rain rises from the ground, it is easy to feel the echo of this ancient rhythm. Water rushing through dry creeks, the roll of thunder across stone, the shimmer of color bending across the sky. In those moments, the serpent's body moves again. Its coil is endless. It binds the beginning to the now, the sky to the soil, the visible to the unseen. It teaches that creation was never finished. It is happening still, every time water touches earth, every time color touches light. Perhaps that is why the elders still say, when you dream of the serpent, you are dreaming with the world itself. You are not merely imagining, you are remembering. Chapter 4. The songs beneath the sand. Every dune holds memory. Each grain of sand carries a verse from the ancestors' songs. To walk the desert, elders say, is to walk across pages of a sacred book, one not written with ink or letters, but with footsteps, sound, and time, across Australia's interior, where the horizon dissolves into heat and silence. There exists a living archive, the desert itself. It may appear empty, but to those who know its language, it is full. The songs that flow beneath the sand are not metaphors. They are maps, stories, and prayers combined for tens of thousands of years. Aboriginal peoples of the central and western deserts have understood that land as a memory system, a vast and precise structure of meaning encoded in place. Every dune, every dry creek bed, every solitary rock is part of a network of remembrance. To know the land is to remember the ancestors. To forget it is to lose one's place in the story of creation. In this worldview, time is not linear. The past is not behind, but all around, resting quietly in the soil, waiting to be reawakened through song. When the right words are spoken in the right place, the past stirs again. The sand remembers the voice. Among the desert nations, the Aranati, the Pajunt Jatara, the Warpuri, and many others, the dreaming Jukapa forms the foundation of identity. It tells not only how the world came to be, but how it continues to be sustained. The stories of the ancestors, sung in ceremony, ensure that the world's pattern remains intact. Without the songs, the desert might fall silent, not only in sound, but in meaning. To a listener from elsewhere, this may seem poetic, even symbolic. But within Aboriginal philosophy, This relationship between sound and survival is literal. A song is a form of care. To sing a waterhole's name is to remind it of its purpose. To sing a mountain's story is to reaffirm its place in the order of things. Elders describe this connection as a kind of conversation with the earth, one that must never cease. The land listens. It remembers every word spoken to it and every step taken upon it. The great sand deserts of Australia, the Simpson, the Great Victoria, the Gibson, are not wastelands, but libraries. Each dune is a shelf of history. Each hollow hides a verse. Anthropologists who have worked with desert communities often speak of the extraordinary precision of these oral traditions. Songs can trace entire routes across hundreds of kilometers, naming each landmark in sequence. They describe the locations of springs, the shape of hills, the direction of winds, and the behavior of animals. But more than that, they weave moral law and sacred genealogy into the geography itself. A person who learns the full length of a songline inherits both a map and a moral code. To travel, it is to walk in harmony with the ancestors. The journey becomes a ceremony. In this sense, walking the desert is never an act of isolation. Even when a traveler appears alone, they move within a network of unseen presences. The spirits of the ancestors, the voices of elders, the pulse of the land, all accompany each step. The desert's silence is not absence, but fullness, in the stillness of midday. When the heat bends the air into waves, one might imagine nothing stirs. Yet beneath the sand, life hums. Seeds wait for rain. Insects tunnel. Lizards lie hidden, listening. Even in rest, the land holds motion. It mirrors the songs, dormant until called upon. The rituals that preserve these songs are among the most sacred aspects of Aboriginal life. They involve dance, body painting, and rhythmic chanting, often accompanied by the didgeridoo or the click of boomerangs. The movements of the dancers trace the paths of ancestral beings. The painted symbols echo the contours of sacred landscapes, spirals for water, parallel lines for sand ridges, dots for stars. When seen from above, these designs resemble maps, but they are not merely depictions. They are reminders that the body itself is part of the land's memory. Each stroke of ochre connects person to place, skin to soil. The songs are not static. They evolve, gently, as they pass from generation to generation. Some verses fade, others emerge. But the core rhythm endures, a steady heartbeat that has persisted across at least 60,000 years of human presence. It is one of the oldest continuous musical traditions on Earth. Western explorers once crossed these deserts and saw only emptiness. They described them as barren, lifeless, hostile. They could not hear the music beneath their feet. Yet the Aboriginal elders who guided them could name every rise and hollow, every subtle change in sand color, each marking of a story. To them, the desert was alive with meaning, a landscape of relationship. When a community performs its songs at night, the desert transforms. The stars above mirror the glowing embers below. The rhythm of the chants matches the pulse of the earth. Dust rises like breath. For a moment, time dissolves. The people and the land sing together. The ancestors, though unseen, are near, their stories carried on the wind. One might wonder how such a system survives without writing. The answer lies in the memory techniques embedded within the songs themselves. Repetition, rhythm, and melody act as anchors for recall. The body remembers what the mind might forget. And so, each generation inherits a world not through text, but through sound and gesture, through ritual and participation. It is said that to sing the wrong song in the wrong place is to disturb the balance of things. The desert has its own etiquette, its own boundaries. Some stories belong to certain groups or kin lines. Others are shared only during specific seasons or after initiation. This sacred governance keeps knowledge in rhythm, ensuring that what is powerful remains protected to the elders. These practices are not relics. They are obligations, duties of care passed down since the dreaming. When they sing, they are not performing for others. They are maintaining the fabric of existence. Each chant nourishes the land, reminding it of its stories, its names, its purpose. Modern science now recognizes that Aboriginal people developed one of the world's most advanced mnemonic systems, one that encoded practical survival information within layers of spiritual narrative. The songs beneath the sand guided navigation, weather prediction, and social law, yet they did so through poetry. The sacred and the scientific were never separate. Some researchers describe this as cognitive mapping, but to the people themselves it is simpler. The land remembers you as you remember it. Forgetting is a form of loss, not only of culture, but of belonging. Even today, when desert communities face the pressures of modern life, mining, displacement, and climate change, the songs persist. They are sung in schools, in community centers, in ceremonies held beneath the open sky. Elders record them, teach them, and carry them forward, knowing that as long as the songs are alive, the land is alive. There is a profound ecological wisdom within this worldview. To listen to the earth, to respect its rhythms, to acknowledge that even the driest place breathes with story. This understanding has sustained human life in one of the harshest environments on the planet for millennia. For the Aboriginal peoples, spirituality was never separate from ecology. Water, fire, wind, and sand were not elements to be conquered, but kin to be honored. To walk across the desert and sing to it is to say, I am part of you, and you are part of me. When night falls and the air cools, the dunes cast long, quiet shadows. The desert seems to exhale. Beneath the stars, you can almost hear a hum, not loud, but steady. Perhaps it is the wind, or perhaps it is something older, the breath of the ancestors moving through the sand, keeping their stories alive. The songs beneath the sand are not gone. They sleep lightly, waiting for those who still listen. Because in truth, memory never dies. It only drifts, waiting for the next voice to call it back into the world. Chapter 5. Firelight and the Story Keepers. Night falls gently across the campfire. The air cools, and the sky opens like a vast canvas of stars. The red dust settles as the flames begin to dance, slow, steady, alive. Around the circle, shadows move in rhythm with the light. The elders begin to speak. Their words flow not as conversation, but as ceremony. This is how the world remembers itself. For thousands of years, Aboriginal storytelling has been the vessel through which knowledge, law, and belonging are passed. Each tale, whether whispered beneath a canopy of stars or chanted in ceremony, carries within it the code of life, instructions for living, warnings for survival, maps for the soul's journey. In many Aboriginal languages, there is no single word for story in the Western sense. Stories are not fictional or optional. They are truth, history, and responsibility. The people who tell them are not entertainers. They are custodians. Storykeepers. These storykeepers carry their knowledge the way a river carries its reflection, never losing it, only changing form with time. Their memory is not stored in books, but in the living landscape, in the shape of hills, the bend of a tree, the meeting point of rivers. Each landmark is a sentence, each pattern in the stars, a reminder of the ancestors' journeys. When the elders speak, they do not only recount the past, they awaken it. The flickering light seems to move with their words, shadows rising and falling like waves against the sand. The children listen closely, though they may not yet understand. For understanding is not the first step in learning. Listening is dot. In this tradition, the act of listening is sacred. It requires patience, presence, and humility. The stories do not reveal their meaning all at once. They unfold slowly, like a dawn that takes its time to rise. Some lessons are meant to be understood only after years of living, when experience has ripened the heart to receive them. Many of these tales belong to the dreaming, or Jukapa, the deep time when ancestral beings shaped the land and established the laws that still govern life. The dreaming is not confined to the past. It is a dimension of ongoing creation, always present. To tell a dreaming story is not to recall history, but to participate in it. An elder may begin with the journey of a great ancestor, a serpent, a bird, a man of flame moving across the unformed earth. As the story unfolds, it describes not only the spirit's deeds, but also the practical realities of country. The path the ancestor walked might correspond to a chain of waterholes, each one still vital for survival. The serpent's resting place might mark a sacred site that must never be disturbed. Through such stories, geography becomes theology. Survival becomes spirituality. When anthropologists first recorded these traditions, they were astonished by their precision. The narratives could encode directions across hundreds of miles with unerring accuracy. They contained detailed knowledge of seasons, animal behavior, celestial movement, and weather cycles, all preserved in rhythmic verse and symbolic metaphor. But the heart of storytelling was never just information. It was communion. Fireligt has always been the stage for this communion. It creates a shared space between seen and unseen, between generations. Around the fire, elders become the bridge between the ancient and the now. Their voices, cracked yet strong, carry the rhythm of centuries. They speak not just for themselves, but for all who came before and all who will come after. Sometimes a story begins with silence, the long pause before a name is spoken. That silence is not emptiness, it is reverence. It allows the listeners to prepare, to open themselves to what is coming. Because in these stories, names are never casual. To name an ancestor or a place is to summon its memory. To speak its journey is to keep it alive. The younger ones sit still, their faces lit by the glow. Their eyes reflect the fire, as if they, too, carry a spark of the ancient flame. They are not being entertained. They are being initiated, gently, word by word, into the memory of the world. In many communities, stories are divided by levels of knowledge. Some are for everyone, told freely to teach moral lessons or history. Others are restricted, shared only within families, clans, or ceremonial groups. The most sacred stories are told only in ritual contexts, accompanied by song, dance, and art. This layered transmission ensures that wisdom is never wasted or mishandled. A child hears the outer story first, perhaps about how a bird brought fire, or how a lizard formed the stars. As they grow older, they learn the inner meanings about balance, respect, and law. And only when they are ready do they receive the deepest truths, hidden within symbols and patterns that guide the spirit as well as the mind. The fire becomes a teacher. Its warmth is comfort, its light, revelation, its crackle, reminder. In the stillness of the desert night, the flames seem to echo the pulse of time itself, a slow rhythm that connects the living to the long line of the dead. Each story, in its own way, teaches responsibility. It reminds the people that everything in the world, every rock, every tree, every breath, carries a story, and that these stories must be honored. When someone forgets their stories, they lose not only their history, but also their relationship to place. And when a place loses its story, it begins to fade, not physically, but spiritually, like a song that no one remembers how to sing. The firelight circles become a shield against forgetting. To the Western observer, these scenes might look simple, a small group sitting under stars, listening to old tales. But in truth, these gatherings are acts of preservation more complex than any archive. Each word carries the weight of law, each gesture a ritual meaning, each pause a reminder that knowledge must move at the pace of breath. Not technology, the elders, too, are aware that the modern world, they see screens replace fires, schools replace oral instruction, and cities draw the young away from country. And yet, they adapt. Some record their voices, others paint their stories in dots and symbols on canvas, transforming sacred memory into visual form. Each adaptation is an act of resilience, proof that the old ways can live within new forms, so long as respect remains in one remote community. An elder once said, "When we tell our stories, we feed the land. When we stop, the land goes hungry." This belief that the earth depends on human remembrance reshapes the idea of storytelling entirely. It is not human-centered. It is ecological, reciprocal. The stories do not exist to serve people. People exist to serve the stories. As the night deepens, the fire burns lower. The circle tightens. The elder's voice softens, as if speaking directly to the flames. The tale may now shift from the physical to the spiritual, from the creation of hills and rivers to the conduct of the soul. The listeners learn that just as the land has its songlines, so too does the spirit. When a person dies, their essence follows these paths, returning to the dreaming from which it came, to know one's stories. Then is to know one's route home. Sometimes, a breeze stirs the ashes and the embers flare briefly. It feels like the ancestor's breath moving through the circle, reminding everyone that they are still here, listening. The old man pauses, eyes reflecting the firelight. His words are slow, deliberate. He reminds the young that each time they tell these stories, they must do so with care, not to change the words, not to rush, not to forget the silences, because the silences are part of the story, too. When the final word fades, no applause follows, only quiet. The kind of quiet that feels full, as though the air itself is remembering. The flames dim, the stars gleam brighter, and the people rest. Another night of teaching completed, another thread of continuity strengthened. The stories will be told again tomorrow, and the next night, and long after the tellers are gone, because firelight has no memory of its own. It depends on hands to feed it, on breath to keep it alive. So too with the stories. In the end, perhaps that is the truest law, that every flame needs tending, and every memory needs a keeper. Chapter 6. The Law of the Dreaming. The dreaming is not only myth, it is law. It is not a story to be remembered, but a system to be lived. It shapes how people belong to each other, how they care for the land, and how they move through the seasons of life. To the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the dreaming, or Jukurpa, Al-Sharinga, Narankani, depending on language and region, is far more than a spiritual idea. It is the foundation of existence. It defines the origins of the world, the nature of reality, and the correct way to live within it. In this cosmology, creation and law are inseparable. The world itself was sung into being through sacred action, and those same songs became the codes of right conduct. In the dreaming, the ancestral beings traveled across an unformed landscape, shaping hills and rivers, trees and animals, but they also established the moral and social order that governs all life. They declared which species were to be hunted, when the fires should be lit, who could marry whom, and what ceremonies must be performed. Every relationship between people, between animals, between spirits and land, was given structure through these divine acts. To break these laws was not only a moral failure, it was a cosmic disturbance. For, in the Aboriginal worldview, human behavior directly affects the balance of the natural world. A wrong action can disturb rainfall, damage fertility, or call illness into being. Harmony between people, land, and spirit is not symbolic. It is practical, necessary, and sacred. The dreaming is therefore both map and mandate, a sacred constitution, older than memory. In Western terms, one might call it religion, law, and ecology combined. Yet even those words are too narrow. The dreaming does not separate the sacred from the everyday. Planting, hunting, gathering, raising children, mourning the dead, all of these are acts of law. Each must follow the patterns sung by the ancestors. Kinship lies at the heart of this order. Every person belongs to a network of relations that extends beyond the human. Family ties are not limited to blood, but include animals, plants, and even elements of landscape. One might be brother to a particular animal species or mother to a water. These relationships carry obligations to protect, to share, to avoid harm. For instance, in many communities, if someone's totem is the kangaroo, they may not hunt or eat it. To do so would be to harm their own extended being. Such restrictions are not superstition, but a form of ecological balance, ensuring that no species is overused and that the sacred order remains intact. Through kinship, every person knows their place in the great web of life. They know who they may marry, who they must avoid, who they can joke with, and who they must respect in silence. These laws are precise and complex, refined over tens of thousands of years. They sustain social harmony without written codes or courts, instead relying on memory, ceremony, and shared understanding in this system. The land itself is a living archive of the law. Every rock formation, every ancient tree carries a lesson from the ancestors. When an elder walks across the country and points to a hill or a river, they might say, "That is where the two brothers fought," or "That is where the emu gave birth to the stars." These are not metaphors. They are history, encoded in geography. The land remembers the law through its very shape. When the elders teach the young, they are not just recounting myths, they are guiding behavior. The story of a careless hunter who ignored a sacred warning may be a way of teaching respect for animals or boundaries. A tale of a serpent who withdrew the reins after a taboo was broken teaches that greed or arrogance can bring imbalance to the world. Every moral teaching is woven seamlessly into landscape and story, so that learning the land is the same as learning the law. This union of ethics and ecology is what makes Aboriginal cosmology profoundly sustainable. Long before environmental philosophy had a name, these communities practiced a spirituality of balance. To burn the grasslands at the wrong time of year would disrupt the cycle of life. To overhunt one species would dishonor its ancestral being. To speak a sacred name in the wrong season could unsettle the spirits of place. Even the smallest acts, collecting water, lighting a fire, sharing food, are bound by law. They are not simply choices, but obligations. They remind the people that the world is alive, listening, responsive. For many non-Indigenous observers, this idea of a law that is sung seems poetic, but within Aboriginal tradition, it is literal. Songlines, or dreaming tracks, are the pathways the ancestors took across the land. Each songline carries the verses that describe creation along its route. As people walk these paths, they sing the same songs, maintaining the link between past and present. The rhythm of their voices keeps the law alive, renewing the world as they move through it. To stop singing would be to let the law fade. This is why ceremony is never optional. Ritual dance, song, and storytelling are not cultural expressions. They are acts of maintenance. They keep creation stable. Each time the people perform them, they reaffirm the ancient covenant between human and world. In some dreaming traditions, this covenant is seen as circular, not linear, like Western history. The ancestors are not gone. They are present in the ground, in the water, in the breath of the wind. The dreaming continues to unfold through human conduct. The world is constantly recreated by living in right relation to it. This idea blurs the line between religion and reality. To live morally is to sustain the physical universe. To forget the law is to unmake the world. It is easy, perhaps, to romanticize such ideas from a distance. But within Aboriginal communities, the law is not abstract. It is demanding. It governs marriage, discipline, reparation, and justice. It defines punishment for wrongdoing, often administered through community judgment. It prescribes who can speak certain stories and who must remain silent. The law does not bend to convenience. It is absolute because it predates humanity itself. Even the English word dreaming can be misleading. It suggests something soft, ethereal, a dream that fades with waking. But for the people who live it, the dreaming is solid, practical, eternal. It holds authority in the same way gravity holds matter. When outsiders first arrived on the continent, they often misunderstood this sacred order. Missionaries and colonizers saw myth where there was constitution, superstition where there was science. They imposed written law over oral law, ownership over but the dreaming was never extinguished. It adapted, whispered, painted, hidden, and later revived. The law endured because it was rooted not in paper, but in land and song. Today, elders still pass the law in ceremony. Children still learn the kinship terms that define respect. Communities still sing the songs that align the human heart with the pulse of the world. Anthropologists, philosophers, and ecologists have begun to recognize this as one of the most intricate systems of ethics and sustainability on Earth, a worldview where morality, ecology, and spirituality are one, not competing truths, but reflections of the same law. The dreaming's law teaches that to exist is to be responsible. No being, human, animal, or spirit, stands alone. Every action ripples outward. When a person speaks kindly, tends to land, or shares food, they reinforce the pattern of harmony that began in the first songs. When they act selfishly or forget their obligations, they create dissonance, and the world feels it. The ancient law is not about control, but about care. It reminds each generation that they are not owners of the land, but caretakers of its memory. They walk paths once walked by beings of immense power, and their footsteps must be light in this sense. The dreaming is not something to believe in, it is something to live. It asks not for worship, but for alignment, not for fear, but for reverence. As the night closes in over the red plains and the stars begin to shimmer above, one might imagine that the ancestors are still singing softly from the folds of the earth. Their songs carry no threat, only reminder that balance is fragile, that memory is sacred, and that every breath taken in harmony is part of the law itself. The dreaming does not end. It moves through every wind, every heartbeat, every act of care, an eternal rhythm that asks, are you still listening to the song of creation? Chapter 7. The spirits of rock and water. In the vast silence of the world's oldest landscapes, there is a living breath beneath the surface of all things. The ground is not inert. The wind is not empty. The stone does not sleep to the first peoples of Australia. Every element of the land, every ridge, every river bend, every scattered rock holds its own consciousness. It is not metaphor, it is reality. The land is alive, aware, and responsive to the conduct of those who walk upon it. Across tens of thousands of years, this understanding has formed the foundation of Aboriginal cosmology. The dreaming, or Jukurpa, or Jira, Narankani, depending on the region and language, is not merely a time long ago. It is an ever-present layer of existence. Within it dwelled the ancestral beings, creators who once shaped the landscape, embedding themselves into stone, tree, and water, where they remain still taught to an outsider. A rock may seem silent, but within traditional Aboriginal knowledge, certain stones are said to have eyes, not eyes that see as humans do, but eyes that know. They observe, remember, and sometimes they speak. These are not symbols or decorative beliefs. They form a legal, ethical, and spiritual relationship between human and land, a covenant of respect that has endured longer than any written code. In many Aboriginal communities, elders speak of country as a living being, not a possession. Country is both mother and memory. It provides food and story, protection and instruction, but it also demands responsibility to walk gently, to speak with care, to never forget the old names. When one enters a sacred site, perhaps a waterhole glimmering beneath red cliffs, or a cave painted with ochre handprints, it is customary to announce oneself. Words are spoken softly to the unseen. Sometimes smoke is offered, or a songline recalled, acknowledging the ancestral spirits who dwell there. This is not ritual for display, it is communication, an act of respect to the presence already inhabiting the space. To the Aboriginal mind, the world does not contain spirits. The world is spirit. Rock, tree, and water are not vessels of divine energy. They are the divine energy, manifest and enduring. In the central deserts, great stone monoliths rise like silent guardians, Uluru, Kotajuta, Kalu, each of them, according to tradition, marks the resting place of an ancestral being. At Uluru, the Mala people tell of the hair wallaby ancestors who traveled from the north, carrying sacred lore and ceremony. Their story is written not on paper, but on the rock itself, through lines, shapes, and shadows carved by the elements and preserved through story. These formations are not monuments to look at. They are beings to listen to. In the dreaming, the ancestors did not die. They transformed their bodies, becoming the contours of the earth. To touch the stone is to touch the skin of creation. Water, too, is alive. Sacred springs and waterholes are often said to be the dwelling places of powerful serpents, the Rainbow Serpent, known by many names: Waggle, Yurlunga, Engeliad. This being is both creator and destroyer, a force that carved the rivers and filled the lakes, giving life but demanding reverence. When the serpent stirs, storms come. When it rests, the land sleeps. To pollute such water, to approach it carelessly, is to offend the being that sustains life itself. Thus, spiritual law becomes ecological law, a principle of survival wrapped in reverence, in northern Arnhem Land. The Yolngu people say that water and rock sing to each other. When rain falls on stone, it awakens the voices of the ancestors within. The resulting echoes, the soft patter of droplets, the rumble of thunder, are heard not as random sounds, but as conversation. Each sound carries meaning if one listens long enough. Listening, in Aboriginal tradition, is not passive. It is sacred attention. To truly listen to the land is to participate in its dreaming, to allow one's senses to stretch beyond the human boundary. Anthropologists have noted that this relationship with the environment creates one of the most sustainable models of existence ever practiced by humankind. No tree is cut without permission. No waterhole approached without ceremony. No creature hunted beyond what is needed. In this way, spirituality, morality, and ecology are one and the same. The landscape itself enforces the balance. To live rightly is to remain in harmony with the awareness that surrounds you. There are ancient sites where the boundary between physical and spiritual seems almost tangible. Caves painted with ochre hands, each hand a signature across time. The pigment, mixed from earth and water, is blown through the mouth, pressing one's presence into the wall. To the ancestors, this act is not art, it is continuity. The wall remembers the breath. The rock retains the story in Western Arnhem Land. The rock paintings of the Mimi spirits depict slender, ghost-like beings said to have taught the first people how to paint, how to hunt, how to live properly. They are considered both invisible and ever-present, moving through cracks in the rock, emerging when the world grows quiet. Even wind patterns can mark a sacred presence. A certain gust that sweeps across a valley might be the movement of an ancestor passing by. A shimmer on the surface of water could be a greeting or a warning. The dreaming is not a past event frozen in myth. It is the eternal pulse of life beneath the visible world. To step into nature with humility and awareness is to step directly into that ongoing creation. From an anthropological perspective, this worldview reflects one of the most sophisticated forms of animism, the belief that all things possess a spiritual essence. But in Aboriginal philosophy, animism is not a belief, it is lived experience. It is verified not through doctrine, but through daily relationship, how one walks, eats, sings, and tends the fire. The land teaches. Silence teaches. Observation replaces argument. There is no divide between sacred and mundane. Even the act of gathering food becomes a ceremony of balance, a conversation between body and earth. This philosophy dissolves the illusion of separation. Humans are not the masters of the environment. They are threads in the same ancient fabric. When one thread is pulled too hard, the whole design shifts. Such understanding carries lessons for the modern world, a world that often treats land as resource, not relative. Perhaps that is why, today, many people turn again toward indigenous wisdom, seeking reconnection with what industrial progress has silenced in this way. The spirits of rock and water remind us that intelligence is not limited to the human mind. Awareness may exist in forms we cannot measure, in stone, in soil, in the slow rhythm of a tree's growth. Science seeks consciousness within neurons. The ancients found it within creation itself. What if both are true? What if the universe, in its quiet vastness, carries memory the way a stone carries heat after sundown, unseen yet enduring? When the wind moves through dry grass, when a ripple disturbs a still pool, when the mountain glows red at dusk, these are not accidents of weather or light. They are gestures of the living world, speaking softly in the oldest language known to Earth. Perhaps, if one stands still long enough and listens without demand, one might hear it, the quiet hum beneath all things, the voice of rock, the breath of water, the spirit of the land remembering itself. Chapter 8. The Wandjina, cloud painters of the Northern, the far reaches of northwestern Australia, where sandstone cliffs glow red and gold beneath the wet season sky. The Wandjina watch in silence. Their faces, wide and pale, emerge from the rock. Eyes dark and steady, heads crowned with halos of radiating lines. They have no mouths. Their silence is not emptiness, but presence. These are not mere paintings. They are beings, the Wandjina, the ancient rainbringers and lawgivers of the Kimberley region. For thousands of years, they have gazed from cave walls and stone shelters, their forms retouched generation after generation, each renewal an act of reverence and responsibility. To stand before them is to stand in the company of the first ancestors who shaped the weather, the rivers, and the moral order of the world. The Wandjina belong to the living tradition of the Wara, Engarinian, and Wanambal peoples. In their cosmology, these beings emerged in the dreaming, not as distant gods, but as forces of creation embodied in cloud and storm. They moved across the land, giving shape to rivers and valleys, naming animals, and setting the laws that would guide human conduct. When their work was done, they entered the stone, leaving their images behind so that people would remember their power. Unlike the wandering tricksters or warrior spirits of other traditions, the Wandjina embody balance. They are the guardians of life's rhythm, the bringers of rain, fertility, and peace. If respected, they bring abundance. If neglected, they withdraw, and the country dries. Each year, when the wet season returns, the people of the north recall the Wandjina in song and ritual. The thunder's first roll is heard not as mere weather, but as the stirring of the ancestral breath. Rain does not simply fall. It descends through the will of the Wandjina, whose essence is carried in the clouds. The art itself, the haunting figures painted high upon rock shelters, remains among the most striking sacred imagery on earth. They are often painted in white pigment, their bodies outlined with red ochre, and surrounded by motifs that ripple outward like waves of power. Some wear elaborate headdresses that resemble radiating light or water currents. Others appear surrounded by smaller figures, representing the first people, spirits, or animals of Dreamtime creation. To the initiated, Every line has meaning. The radiating halos symbolize the rain clouds that crown the Wandjina during the wet season. The absence of a mouth carries layered significance. It is said they do not need to speak, for their authority is absolute. Another tradition holds that if they had mouths, the rain would never stop. Their silence, therefore, keeps the world in balance. The Wandjina's eyes, dark and unwavering, are the eyes of eternity, always watching, ensuring the laws of the dreaming are upheld. In their gaze lies a reminder that humans are never unobserved by the spirit world. Archaeological studies show that Wandjina imagery is among the oldest continuous art traditions still practiced. Some sites date back over 4,000 years, yet the style remains consistent proof of an unbroken chain of spiritual inheritance. Unlike fossilized religions that live only in text, this is a living theology, renewed through care. When the paint begins to fade, the elders return to restore it. But the act of repainting is not casual artistry. Only certain people, custodians of the Wandjina, hold the authority to touch these figures. The pigments are mixed from sacred earths, and the renewal ceremony includes prayer, smoke, and offerings. The fresh paint is not just color, it is the reawakening of presence. The Wandjina, thus, are not symbols of the past. They are present beings who must be kept alive through devotion and correct action. This understanding transforms the landscape itself into a living temple. Every rock shelter is both shrine and archive, recording divine memory in pigment and dust. The laws of the Wandjina are not written, but lived. They teach that harmony between humans and the environment is sacred obligation. Rain must come in its time. People must take only what they need. The seasons must remain in rhythm. These principles are ecological in function and spiritual in origin, a unity of survival and sanctity. In this worldview, breaking the law is not simply disobedience. It is imbalance. Greed, violence, or neglect of ceremony disturbs the natural cycles. When harmony is broken, the Wandjina turn away and the rains cease. Drought, then, is not only a meteorological event, it is a spiritual warning. This relationship between ethics and environment is strikingly advanced. Modern science calls it sustainability. Aboriginal philosophy calls it law, not imposed by human rulers, but woven into creation itself. Among the Wara and Engarinian stories tell of how the Wandjina shaped specific landmarks. A certain waterfall might mark the site where a Wandjina struck the earth with lightning. A circular pool might be the print of their foot. Clouds that form in particular patterns are interpreted as signs, the ancestors watching, reminding, responding. The mythology extends beyond the natural to the moral. Wandjina stories teach cooperation, sharing, and respect between clans. Children grow up hearing tales of how the Wandjina blessed those who cared for the land and punished those who disrespected its gifts. Thus, every storm becomes a sermon. Every rainfall, a renewal of covenant. When European explorers first entered the Kimberley in the 19th century, they were awed by the Wandjina paintings. Some mistook them for depictions of angels or otherworldly visitors. Later, fringe theories tried to link them to extraterrestrial imagery, seeing the radiant halos as helmets or spacesuits. But such interpretations miss the essence entirely. To the Aboriginal custodians, the Wandjina are not aliens from the sky, they are the sky. They are the living manifestation of weather, law, and memory. To misread them as physical beings is to misunderstand the depth of their presence. They exist not in the space above, but in the sacred relationship between land, spirit, and community. Over time, as colonization spread and traditional ceremonies were suppressed, some Wandjina sites were neglected. But in recent decades, a resurgence of cultural pride has renewed their care. Elders, artists, and young custodians now travel long distances to repaint and protect these ancestral figures. In modern Aboriginal art, the Wandjina have become a powerful symbol of identity, representing not just the past, but endurance. Yet the sacred rules remain unchanged. Even in galleries, the Wandjina cannot be sold or freely reproduced without permission from their custodians. To use their image carelessly is to disrupt the balance they maintain. The art may be ancient, but the law it enforces is eternal. Standing before a Wandjina painting, one feels a strange stillness, not fear, but recognition. The face is human-like, yet otherworldly. The lack of mouth draws one into silence. The eyes seem to meet yours, not accusing, not forgiving, simply aware. And the air around feels heavier, as if charged by an unseen presence. Some elders say the Wandjina live not only in the cliffs, but in the mist that rises after rain. When clouds gather, it is their breath returning to the sky. When lightning splits the horizon, it is their sign, a reminder that the law still stands. The Wandjina remind the world that spirituality need not separate humanity from nature, that divinity may not dwell in distant heavens, but in the pulse of rain and the veins of rock, that memory can exist without words, carried instead in the pigments of stone and the silence of a face that never speaks. And perhaps that silence is itself the teaching, for in their wordless gaze, the Wandjina express what language cannot, that all things are connected clouds, rivers, breath, and law. Their silence asks, what would happen if humankind, too, remembered how to listen? If it could once more hear the wisdom in thunder, the instruction in rain, the patience of stone. The Wandjina do not answer. They have no mouths. Yet their presence endures a quiet law written in the face of the earth itself. Chapter 9. The Yowie and the Shadow Beings. Not all spirits of the dreaming bring comfort. Some dwell in the twilight, at the thin edge between seen and unseen, where the wind carries whispers and the land feels alert. They are not evil, but they are powerful, demanding respect. Among them walks the Yowie, the shadow being of the bush. In Aboriginal Australia, the Yowie is known by many names. Across different nations, its form and meaning shift, but the essence remains constant, a towering, hairy, human-like creature, more spirit than flesh, dwelling deep within the wilderness. It is a being of reminder, not malice, a manifestation of law, boundary, and consequence. To the modern ear, the Yowie may sound like legend or myth, something akin to the North American Bigfoot. But within the Aboriginal worldview, its story reaches far deeper than folklore. It belongs not to superstition, but to law, the sacred order that binds land, people, and spirit into one. The Yowie is said to inhabit the dense forests and rocky plateaus of eastern Australia, especially the Great Dividing Range, the Blue Mountains, and the far north's shadowed bushlands. Descriptions vary. Some say it stands taller than a man, with long arms and a heavy brow. Others say it moves like a phantom, silent despite its size. In some accounts, it has glowing eyes. In others, it leaves no footprint at all. But every story carries the same lesson. The Yowie marks the threshold between the human and the sacred. To wander too deep into its domain without care, to speak carelessly, To mock the spirits, to forget the laws of respect, is to invite its attention. It is the guardian of places that should not be disturbed. Elders have long taught that fear of the Yowie is not to be dismissed, but to be understood. Fear itself, in this tradition, is not punishment, it is protection. It keeps people aware of the spiritual dimensions of their surroundings. To feel watched in the wilderness is to be reminded that the land, too, is alive and aware. Anthropologists studying Aboriginal mythologies often note that such beings serve multiple roles. They are moral enforcers, ecological teachers, and spiritual gatekeepers. In this light, the Yowie embodies what Western thought separates: nature, conscience, and the unseen. When a person walks the bush and senses something vast, something not human but aware, that is the presence of the dreaming. The Yowie becomes the form that feeling takes. It is the pulse of land made visible, the spirit of remoteness and consequence. To the old stories, the Yowie is not always alone. The world of shadow beings is wide, a landscape of spirits that dwell in darkness, not because they are wicked, but because they belong to the mystery of things unseen. One of the most haunting among them are the Min lights. These floating orbs of luminescence have been witnessed across the outback, drifting silently above the ground, following travelers or vanishing just when approached. Science has tried to explain them: phosphorescent gases, reflected headlights, mirages. But to many Aboriginal groups, the Min lights are the souls of the dead, or the presence of ancestral watchers. They appear when a person enters a place of great spiritual significance, or when the spirits wish to remind someone of proper conduct. The lights are neither friend nor foe. They are messengers. To chase them is to disrespect them. To observe quietly is to honor their warning. Even non-Indigenous settlers who encountered the Min lights often reported feelings of unease, reverence, or paralysis sensations that echo traditional beliefs about sacred presence. It is as though the land itself uses light to speak in silence. Throughout Aboriginal cosmology, shadow beings play a crucial role in maintaining balance. The dreaming is not a story of unbroken peace. It is a web of harmony maintained by tension. Just as the Rainbow Serpent creates and destroys, these darker spirits ensure that humans never grow careless. They embody the consequences of forgetting sacred law. The Yowie and its kin are therefore not demons, but reminders. They remind humanity that every gift of the land carries responsibility, that every path has an owner, that silence must be respected as much as sound in some regions. Stories tell of the Quinkin, mischievous or dangerous spirits who live in caves and rocky outcrops. Some Quinkin are playful, others are terrifying. In Cape York traditions, two types are often named: the Imjim, small, shadowy beings who play tricks, and the Toromoli, giant spirits with long arms and fierce strength. They inhabit the crevices of the land and the corners of human awareness, unseen forces shaping the rhythm of respect. For many communities, these stories are not distant myths, but living maps. They encode information about geography, safety, and ethics. Certain valleys are avoided not because of superstition, but because they are dangerous, fragile, or sacred. By wrapping such wisdom in the language of spirits, the ancestors ensured its survival. So, when the Yowie appears in story or dream, it may not be warning of attack, but of imbalance. Perhaps the land has been disturbed. Perhaps a boundary was crossed. In this way, the unseen world communicates through symbol and fear. teaching reverence through experience. It is tempting for modern listeners to treat such tales as folklore, but to the traditional custodians, they are ongoing truths. The dreaming never ended. It is not a past myth, but a continuous reality. The Yowie and the Min Min lights still walk, still drift, still watch. They exist not in opposition to modernity, but as reminders of what the modern world forgets, that spirit and matter are never separate. Even today, reports of Yowie sightings persist across Australia. Bushwalkers speak of strange cries in the night, of heavy footsteps, of a feeling of being followed in silent valleys. Whether one believes in the literal creature or not, the emotion it evokes, or humility, awareness continues to serve its ancient purpose. The Aboriginal relationship with fear is different from the Western one. In Western thought, fear is often something to be conquered, dismissed, or cured. In traditional law, fear has value. It keeps balance intact. It reminds the individual that they are part of something vast and sentient, a cosmos of consequence. To feel fear in the presence of sacred land is to recognize one's smallness, one's place within the greater design. That recognition is not weakness. It is wisdom. Thus, even the Yowie, a being of shadow and silence, becomes part of the sacred ecology. It ensures that people move with care, that they respect the power of place, and that arrogance never takes root. Anthropologist Deborah Bird Rose once described Aboriginal cosmology as a moral ecology where every creature, even those that terrify, plays a role in maintaining ethical balance. The Yowie, the Quinkin, the Min Min lights all belong to this moral landscape. They do not simply haunt the land, they complete it. In Dreamtime philosophy, every emotion, love, joy, sorrow, fear, serves creation. Even shadows have function. They remind humans that light alone cannot teach wisdom. Only contrast, the awareness of consequence, can do that. And so, when night falls across the bush and the trees seem to breathe in unison, it is said that the spirits stir. Some watch, some wander, some warn, but all exist for the same purpose, to keep the sacred circle whole in the end. Perhaps the Yowie is not a creature of the wilderness at all, but a mirror of human conduct, a reflection of how one walks upon the earth. Those who respect the land rarely see it. Those who forget may feel its shadow, and maybe that is the true teaching hidden beneath centuries of story, that fear, too, is a sacred teacher. That the unknown should not always be chased away by explanation. That sometimes the dark is not the enemy of light, but its necessary companion, for in the dreaming, every shadow belongs, even the ones that watch us from the edge of the firelight. Chapter 10. Dreams as portals between worlds. Sleep is not rest. It is a journey. When the eyes close and the body drifts into stillness, the spirit begins to move. It leaves the boundaries of the waking world and enters another realm, the vast, unseen space where time folds, memory breathes, and the ancestors wait. For many ancient peoples, to dream was not to imagine, but to travel. Dreams were not illusions. They were messages, meetings, and returns. Across the Aboriginal nations of Australia, dreams have always held sacred weight. They are more than private experiences. They are channels of connection, threads in the living fabric of the dreaming. Through dreams, the spirit may revisit its origin, communicate with ancestral beings, or receive knowledge that belongs to the land. Each dream, no matter how brief, carries potential meaning. In English. The word Dreamtime has become a simple label for a vast cosmological system, but to those who live within it, it is not a past event or mythic age. It is ongoing, eternal. The dreaming is both time and space, both creation and continuity, and dreams, in their nightly rhythm, are the pathways that let a person move through it once more. When one dreams, the physical body remains grounded on earth, but the spirit self wanders. It may visit the places of ancestors, walk upon sacred country, or encounter totemic beings, the great creative forces that shaped rivers, hills, and stars. What happens in these journeys is not fantasy. It is participation in the same creation that formed the world. Elders often say that dreams can teach what waking cannot. Through them, people may receive songs, dances, or designs that strengthen their connection to country. A dream might reveal where to find water in a drought, or when a season is about to shift. Sometimes it brings a warning, a healing, or a vision of one's purpose. Such dreams are not for entertainment or curiosity. They carry responsibility. To receive a message from the dreaming is to become its keeper. In this worldview, the dreamer does not control the dream. Rather, the dream allows itself to unfold through the dreamer. It is a visitation, a conversation between worlds, and when morning comes, it is vital to recall what was shown. For forgetfulness is like letting sacred smoke drift away on the wind. Anthropologists who have worked with Aboriginal communities describe dreams as forms of spiritual geography. Each dream event may link to a specific landscape, a rock formation, a waterhole, a grove. These locations are not symbols. They are living presences. The land itself participates in dreaming. In this way, sleep becomes a ceremony of belonging. The Warlpiri people speak of Jukurpa, a word often translated as dreaming, but whose meaning runs deeper. Jukurpa is the law of creation, the blueprint of existence. To dream of a place, therefore, is to encounter that place's living law. Through dreams, humans remain in dialogue with the land that sustains them. For others, such as the Yolngu in Arnhem Land, dreams are considered part of Wanga, the sacred dimension from which songs and stories arise. If a person dreams of a new songline, a path across the earth marked by ancestral movement, it may become part of communal ceremony, guiding future generations. The dream becomes a map, both spiritual and literal. Dreaming also bridges the living and the dead. In many Aboriginal cultures, it is believed that ancestors visit through dreams, not as memories, but as presences. They may appear in human form or through animal totems. Their purpose is rarely to frighten. It is to advise, to comfort, or to remind the living of their responsibilities. When someone passes away, their spirit continues its journey within the dreaming. Dreams are one of the few ways the living can glimpse that ongoing existence. If an ancestor appears, it is a moment of contact across the veil, not illusion, but sacred encounter. This is why dreams are shared carefully. To speak them aloud can be part of honoring what was received, but only with respect. Some dreams are kept private, known only to those permitted to hold them. Beyond Aboriginal cosmology, the sacred nature of dreams echoes across many ancient traditions. In Egypt, dreams were seen as divine messages from the gods, delivered through temples of sleep. In ancient Greece, the practice of incubation invited dream revelation in sacred sanctuaries, a deliberate act of sleeping in the presence of divinity. Among Native American nations, dreams were a source of guidance and spiritual initiation, revealing power animals and personal medicine everywhere across cultures. Sleep was treated not as escape, but as access. It was the moment when the soul could move freely, unanchored from the limits of daylight reason, and yet, perhaps nowhere else on earth was this idea woven so seamlessly into the structure of daily life as in Aboriginal Australia. Here dreaming was not one event among many, it was the essence of existence. To live rightly was to remain in harmony with the dreaming, awake or asleep. Modern science explains dreams as neurological processes, fragments of memory and imagination stitched together by the sleeping brain. But even within that frame, something remarkable remains. The universal human need to make meaning of the images that arise in darkness. The mind seeks connection, the same way the spirit seeks understanding. So perhaps, whether interpreted spiritually or psychologically, dreaming still performs its ancient role, to guide, to heal, to remind. There is also a quiet symmetry between indigenous understanding and modern insight. Science tells us that dreaming helps organize emotion, memory, and perception, that it keeps the self coherent. Traditional wisdom says the same, but through a different lens, that dreaming keeps the soul in balance, connected to all that lives. Two languages, one truth, that dreams maintain the link between inner and outer worlds. In the rhythms of Aboriginal ceremony, dreams and waking life mirror each other. The songs sung in ritual often originate from dreams. The patterns painted on skin or stone recall visions seen while asleep. This reciprocity between worlds ensures that the dreaming remains alive, not as history, but as relationship. When an elder recounts a dream to the younger generation, they are not merely telling a story, they are transmitting lore. The dream carries moral, ecological, and spiritual guidance. It reminds listeners of the right way to move through the world, to speak to the land, to behave toward kin and stranger alike. A single dream may hold a lifetime of teaching, unfolding gradually as understanding deepens. Sometimes the dream is not comforting. It may reveal imbalance, or foretell illness, or warn of disrespect towards sacred things. But even such dreams are acts of care. They correct rather than punish, reorienting the dreamer toward harmony. It is said that before birth, the soul dreams itself into being. Each person is connected to a specific dreaming, a totemic source that defines their spirit's lineage. Through that dreaming, they inherit stories, animals, and songs. In life, through sleep, they return to it again and again, like a bird returning to its nesting place. Death, too, is part of this rhythm, the spirit leaving the waking body to rejoin the eternal dreaming, from which all life first emerged. When understood in this way, sleep becomes sacred time. Every night, one crosses the border between the physical and the spiritual, between memory and mystery. Dreams, then, are the small rehearsals of eternity, practiced for the final journey back into the great continuity. To the reflective listener, this view carries quiet wisdom. Perhaps the reason dreams feel so real is because they are. Perhaps what we call imagination is merely a soft translation of a truth too vast for daylight. And perhaps, when an ancestor appears in a dream, it is not the mind inventing comfort, it is the universe reminding us that connection does not end. The modern world often treats dreaming as a private illusion, but to the old law, it is communal. It belongs to the land, to ancestry, to the balance of creation. Each dream is a thread in the great net that holds everything together: humans, animals, spirits, stars. To dream is to participate in the eternal conversation of existence. when morning light returns and the dream dissolves. One might feel a lingering echo, an image, a feeling, a word. That trace is not meaningless. It is the evidence of travel. The spirit has gone somewhere and come back, and in its return, it brings wisdom that may not yet have words. So, as the ancients taught, the task is simple but sacred. Remember what you can, hold it gently, and move through the day as though you were still in conversation with the unseen. Because, in truth, you always are. For when the world grows silent again, and sleep returns to reclaim you, the spirit will rise once more, walking softly across the threshold between worlds into the dream that never ends. Chapter 11. Totems and the Threads of Solin, the Ancient Cosmologies of Aboriginal Australia. Every being, human, animal, plant, and even the features of the land, is part of one vast web of kinship. This web is not metaphorical. It is the structure of existence itself. At its heart lies the totem, the sacred emblem or spirit link that binds each person to the living fabric of the world. A totem is not chosen. It is inherited, sung into one's being through ancestry, birth, and land. It is the mark of belonging that extends beyond tribe or bloodline, uniting the human soul with its non-human kin. To have a totem is to have a mirror in nature, an other self, alive in fur, feather, leaf, or stone. The totem does not merely symbolize identity. It is identity reflected outward through the natural world. In many Aboriginal languages, the English word totem cannot capture the full depth of meaning. It comes originally from the Ojibwe term, or toteman, meaning one's brother-sister kin. But in Australia, the concept unfolds in layers far richer and older. Totemic systems, known variously as dreamings, jukupa, or moieties, define every part of social and spiritual life. They determine marriage laws, ceremonial duties, and ecological stewardship. They describe who one may marry, what one must protect, and how one relates to every form of life encountered. Among many Aboriginal nations, a child's totem is linked to the site of their conception or birth, a grove, a patch of sky infused with ancestral power. The spirit that animates that place becomes part of the child's soul. In this way, geography and genealogy are inseparable. The land quite literally gives birth to its people. To be of a totem, then, is not a symbol of personality or preference. It is the recognition that one's soul participates in the same eternal pattern as that being the kangaroo, the eagle, the goanna, the honey ant, the rain. Each carries its own sacred law, its own dreaming, and those born under its care inherit that spiritual lineage. Across the continent, the structure of totemic connection varies. Among the Yolngu of Arnhem Land, for example, each person is born into one of two great moieties, Dua or Yiritia, each with its own set of totems, songs, and ceremonies. The balance between these two halves maintains the cosmic order. No person or group exists in isolation. Every being depends on its opposite to sustain life's rhythm. Far to the west, in the desert communities of the Pintupi and Warlpiri peoples, totems are linked to specific dreamings, ancestral journeys that carved out the landscape. A man might be born of the honey ant dreaming, his sister of the emu dreaming, his friend of the lightning dreaming. Each totemic line holds stories of creation, migration, and transformation. Through ceremony, song, and dance, these stories are continually reenacted, keeping the world alive. The anthropologist W.E.H. Stanner once described this system as a moral ecology, a framework that fuses ethics, spirituality, and environment into one seamless whole. To care for one's totem species is to care for one's own being. The relationship is reciprocal. Protect the kangaroo, and the kangaroo spirit protects you. Neglect it, and balance begins to fray, both within and without. In the logic of the dreaming, no creature exists for itself alone. The emu that crosses the desert is not just an animal. It is an ancestor still walking the first path of creation. The snake that coils beneath the rock may be a memory of the Rainbow Serpent, who shaped rivers and mountains at the beginning of time. Even the smallest insect or seed carries its share of sacred responsibility. Totemic lore teaches that every act, eating, hunting, speaking, or naming, has spiritual consequence. If one's totem is the goanna, that person must never kill or eat goannas. The taboo is not fear-based. It is respect. To harm one's totem is to wound the self, to sever a link in the great chain of kinship. Each law of restraint, each ritual of gratitude, keeps the delicate web intact. These customs, passed down through tens of thousands of years, are not only spiritual doctrine, they are systems of ecological management. By protecting their totem species, communities prevent overuse of natural resources, ensuring that each creature continues to thrive. Thus, what may appear to outsiders as superstition reveals itself as a profoundly sustainable form of wisdom. Human law and natural law are the same song, sung in harmony. Totemism also shapes the fabric of human relationship. Marriage, for example, is guided by totemic complementarity. One must not marry within the same totemic line, for that would blur the distinctions that keep balance. Instead, unions occur between moieties, extending kinship and cooperation across the land. The result is a vast network of obligation, a sacred kinship that binds communities into one living organism. Every ceremony, every song, and every story honors this unity. A totem dance is not simply art. It is communication with the totem being itself. When a person paints their totem on their body during ritual, they are not representing it, they are becoming it, if only for a moment. Through that embodiment, the bond between human and non-human is renewed. This principle resonates beyond Aboriginal tradition. Across the world, in nearly every ancient culture, echoes of totemism appear. The bear clans of Siberia, the eagle warriors of Mesoamerica, the serpent cults of Africa and the Mediterranean, all speak of a shared understanding that humanity's true identity is relational, not solitary. We are reflections of the life around us. We are shaped by what we revere. Yet, in the Aboriginal worldview, this relationship carries an even deeper implication. To be of a totem is to recognize that spirit and matter are inseparable. The divine is not distant, not confined to heaven or temple. It flows through all forms, seen and unseen. The totem is both symbol and embodiment of that truth. When the rain falls, the rain-dreaming ancestors are not merely remembered, they are present. When the kangaroo grazes in the early light, it is the continuation of a spirit being who never ceased to exist. In such a world, spirituality is not an abstract belief system. It is the texture of daily life. The way one walks, speaks, and hunts reflects the awareness of sacred kinship. Even the simple act of gathering food carries ceremony, for each act participates in the ongoing creation. This understanding challenges the modern notion of the human as separate from nature. In totemic thought, the self extends outward into soil, water, and sky. Identity is collective. Spirit is shared. The boundaries between I and it dissolve, leaving only we. Totemic connection also carries healing power. When someone falls ill, it may be said that their totem spirit has been neglected, or that their bond to country has weakened. Healing, then, is not only physical but spiritual, a process of realigning with the totemic pattern through ritual, song, and reconnection with sacred places. That alignment can be restored. Among the Arrernte of Central Australia, healers known as Ngongkari sometimes draw upon their totemic spirits to bring balance back to the sick. They may call upon the energy of their totem, animal, or element, using touch, smoke, or song to reweave the spiritual threads that sustain life. In doing so, they remind the community that every being, seen and unseen, contributes to collective well-being. Even dreams, as explored in earlier teachings, may carry messages from one's totem. A bird seen repeatedly in dream or waking life may be a sign, a reminder of duties unfulfilled or harmony restored. In this sense, the totem watches over its human counterpart as much as the human watches over it. To outsiders, such ideas may sound mystical or symbolic, yet to those who live within the dreaming, they are practical realities, as clear and natural as sunrise. Totemism is not philosophy. It is participation. The world is alive because it is continually acknowledged, cared for, and sung into being. Without that recognition, the web of existence would fall silent. It is a way of life that invites reflection for those beyond its tradition. In the modern age, where disconnection from the natural world grows deeper with each generation, the totemic principle offers quiet correction. It whispers that no creature stands alone, that every act, from consumption to conversation, ripples outward through the whole. It reminds us that identity is not possession, but relationship. We are not separate from the earth. We are expressions of it. To walk in harmony with one's totem is to live with reverence. It means seeing the divine not in distant heavens, but in the eyes of the animal, the texture of bark, the sound of flowing water. It means moving gently, speaking truthfully, and acting with gratitude. Each of these gestures keeps the spiritual fabric intact. The elders often say, everything is connected, everything is alive. It is a truth both simple and immense. The totem is that connection made visible, the living thread that ties the soul to the endless story of creation. It is a reminder that the sacred is not elsewhere. It is here, within the world itself. And so, the totem endures, in rock, in rain, in the breath of each living thing, weaving together the great tapestry of being. Each thread glows with its own spirit, yet all belong to the same loom. To honor one's totem is to honor that truth. To forget it is to forget ourselves. Perhaps that is why, even now, when the modern world seems far from its sacred roots, the totem still calls to us, softly, steadily asking, do you remember what you were connected to? Chapter 12. The Women's Dreaming and the Sacred Earth in the deep heart of Australia's interior. Beneath the endless shimmer of desert sky, there are songs only women sing. They are soft songs carried on the wind, shaped by the breath of ancestors and bound to the quiet fertility of the land. These songs and the ceremonies that hold them are known as the women's dreaming. They are the sacred balance to the men's law, the other half of the cosmic conversation that keeps the world alive. In Aboriginal tradition, creation is not a distant event, it is continuous. The dreaming is not something that was. It is something that is through ritual and story. Each generation sustains the pulse of that eternal creation. The women's dreaming, especially, tends to the gentler rhythms, the birth of children, the flow of rivers, the ripening of plants, and the cycle of rain. It is the spiritual tending of the earth's womb, the source of all renewal. In many Aboriginal cultures, the world is divided into complementary spheres, men's business and women's business. These are not hierarchies, but harmonies, twin systems of sacred responsibility. The men's ceremonies often involve hunting, initiation, and the great ancestral journeys that carved the land. The women's ceremonies, quieter but no less powerful, focus on nurturing, fertility, and the life-giving waters beneath the soil. Among the Aranti people of Central Australia, women are custodians of Aweli, the body painting ceremonies that connect their own bodies to the land's design. Each pattern painted on the skin mirrors a sacred site, a track of ancestral movement, or a symbol of fertility. The OKRs used are not decoration. They are invocation. To paint oneself is to align one's being with the earth's spirit. The curves of the painted lines echo the ridges of sand dunes and riverbeds, the landscape itself reborn on the human form. When women sing the Aweli songs, they awaken the ancestral spirits sleeping beneath the ground. Their voices are believed to stir the hidden waters, calling them to rise. This is more than poetry. In desert environments where life depends on rainfall and underground springs, these ceremonies carry immense ecological wisdom. By performing them, women ensure that waterholes are remembered, respected, and ritually renewed. The land listens, and through song it breathes again in the north. Among the Yolngu people of Arnhem Land, women's ceremonies honor the Wavalik sisters, ancestral beings who represent fertility, transformation, and the sacred link between womanhood and the elements. Their story tells of two sisters who traveled across the land, giving birth to species and sacred sites as they went. They carried baskets of yams, seeds, and water, feeding life wherever they walked. But when they trespassed into a men's ceremonial ground, the great Rainbow Serpent rose and swallowed them whole, a reminder of the delicate boundaries that sustain sacred balance. Their spirits, however, lived on, nourishing the earth from within. The Wavalik myth is retold through women's ritual dances, where each gesture recalls creation's first movements. The sound of clapsticks, the pulse of voices, and the rhythm of feet in sand all echo the heartbeat of the world itself. Through these acts, women reaffirm their creative power, not as domination, but as guardianship. To sing the Wavalak story is to help the earth remember its origin, to remind it that life must continue across the continent. Women's dreamings are inseparable from the cycles of fertility. They mark the turning of the seasons, the coming of the rains, and the ripening of wild foods. In some desert groups, women are responsible for calling forth the yam dreaming, one of the oldest and most widespread ancestral stories. The yam, a root that sustains life even in harsh conditions, becomes both symbol and sustenance. Through ritual, women trace its underground pathways in song, mapping the hidden nourishment of the land. Each of these ceremonies is not only an act of remembrance, but of participation. When women sing of the yam's growth, they do not imagine it, they assist it. The songs are believed to guide the plant's spirit, encouraging it to flourish. Just as the earth births its food, the women birth its song. The sacred and the practical, the mystical and the ecological, are one and the same to understand the women's dreaming. One must understand Aboriginal cosmology, There is no separation between the human body and the earth's body. The land is alive, conscious, feeling, responsive. It has arteries of water, bones of stone, and a womb of fertile soil. Women's rituals keep this body in rhythm. Through their chants, they communicate directly with the spirit of the earth, asking it to stay generous, to stay whole, at sacred sites associated with the feminine, such as waterholes, rock pools, and sand. Women gather in small circles. They paint symbols of their dreamings on the ground, often in intricate patterns made of colored sand or crushed seeds. These sand paintings, temporary yet sacred, act as maps of creation. When the ceremony ends, the paintings are wiped away, returning the earth to stillness. Nothing is kept. Nothing is owned. All creation is a cycle: birth, growth, death, renewal, and the rituals mirror that eternal return to the Western mind. The idea of women's business can sound limiting or exclusionary, but within the Aboriginal worldview, it represents profound authority. Women are not only nurturers, they are law-bearers. They hold the knowledge of conception sites, of birthing places, and of the songs that sustain the world's fertility. Without their ceremonies, life would lose its rhythm. Men's and women's dreamings together form the complete pattern, the masculine shaping force and the feminine renewing flow. Each depends on the other. Even the land itself reflects this dual law. There are male mountains and female rivers, masculine winds and feminine rains. Each feature carries a spiritual gender, and through that, a responsibility. When women sing to the rivers, they are speaking to a living ancestor, one who remembers the first rains and the birth of the world. To care for that ancestor is to ensure that the land remains generous for all. In many communities, women are also the custodians of birth dreamings. They know the places where the spirits of unborn children reside, sacred pools, caves, or trees. When a woman conceives, it is said that a child's spirit from one of these places has entered her. The identity of that spirit determines the child's totem, its responsibilities, and its connection to the land. Thus, motherhood is not only biological, it is cosmological. The act of giving birth is a continuation of creation itself. During childbirth, songs are sung to guide both mother and child through the transition. The earth and the body work together, the two wombs mirroring one another. After birth, women return to the same sacred sites to offer thanks, ensuring that the spirit child's connection to the land remains strong. In this way, every new life is anchored to place, not as ownership, but as belonging. The feminine dreaming is not confined to fertility or motherhood. It also encompasses transformation, endurance, and the hidden strength of silence. In harsh desert environments, women are the keepers of knowledge about food gathering, water sources, and plant medicine. Their dreamings often encode ecological information, which roots can be eaten, when seeds should be collected, how long certain animals gestate. The stories may seem mythic, but within them lies deep science. The earth speaks, and women's songs are how it remembers what it once told them. Some anthropologists have called these stories ecological libraries. Each generation adds to them, adjusts them, refines them, ensuring that knowledge remains alive, never frozen in text. Through this oral lineage, wisdom flows like water, adapting yet continuous. It is a sacred form of sustainability, rooted not in control but in respect. To listen to the women's dreaming is to hear the earth breathing. Its rhythm is slow, cyclical, maternal. It does not rush toward endings or achievements. it returns again and again to the center, to renewal. In a world obsessed with progress, these ceremonies remind us that the future is born from repetition, not departure. The land does not advance. It revolves, and in each turn, women's voices guide it gently onward. There is a quiet beauty in the way the women's dreaming persists. Even today, amid modern pressures and disrupted lands, many Aboriginal women continue these rituals. They gather under moonlight, paint their bodies, and sing the old songs. Some do so in secret, away from the eyes of those who might misunderstand. Yet the songs endure because they are needed. Without them, the sacred pulse of the earth would fade into silence. When anthropologists first recorded these traditions, they often dismissed them as fertility cults or primitive superstition. But those who listened deeply came to see something profound. A system of thought in which spirit, ecology, and gender are interwoven into a single pattern. It is not a religion of worship, but of relationship. The earth is not an object of devotion, but a relative, a living being whose health mirrors our own. Through women's ceremonies, this relationship is renewed again and again. Each dance, each painting, each whispered chant is a conversation with the world's womb, the unseen center from which all life emerges. The women's dreaming is not only about creation, it is creation constantly unfolding, like a song without end. If one were to stand at a distance and listen to those voices rising, falling, merging with the sound of wind and insects, one might not understand the words, but something deeper would be felt, a recognition that the earth itself is singing through them. Chapter 13. The men's ceremonies and the fire of continuance. In the quiet stillness of the desert night, the fire burns low. Its light flickers across painted faces and the ochred earth, casting long shadows that move like spirits around the circle. Here, in this sacred space, beyond the reach of ordinary life, boys become men, not through battle or conquest, but through knowledge, endurance, and connection. These are the men's ceremonies, the ancient rites through which law, identity, and memory are carried forward among Aboriginal peoples across Australia. The men's ceremonies are the guardians of continuity. They preserve the sacred codes, not written in books, but in stories, songs, and symbols etched into the body and remembered in the soul. Each act, each gesture, holds meaning that stretches back to the dreaming, that timeless realm when ancestral beings shaped the land, set down the laws, and gave humanity its path. To take part in these rituals is to step into that eternal story. It is not merely tradition, it is rebirth. The journey begins in secrecy. Young initiates are taken from the camp by the elders, often without warning. Mothers weep softly as their sons disappear into the night, for they know the path ahead is sacred and necessary. The boys leave behind the world of childhood, entering into the realm of men, spirits, and law. Each community holds its own unique rites, shaped by the land and its stories. Among the Arrernte of Central Australia, the initiation may involve long days of teaching, storytelling, and ceremony. For the Yolngu people in the north, the Dopi initiation marks the passage to manhood through dance, body marking, and sacred songs. While details differ, the essence remains the same: the transmission of knowledge and the affirmation of belonging. Knowledge in this world is not information, it is relationship. It is the connection between self, land, and ancestor. Through these rites, a young man learns where he comes from, what his totem is, which songlines cross his country, and which sacred sites he must protect. He learns who he can marry, which kinship groups he belongs to, and how the laws of behavior sustain harmony in the community. Without this knowledge, a person would be lost, adrift without anchor in the vastness of the dreaming. The fire, central to many men's ceremonies, represents the eternal flame of creation. It is the fire lit by the ancestors themselves, the same flame that burns within the stars. Elders say that the fire is alive. It listens, it remembers. When they chant beside it, they are speaking both to it and through it. The smoke rising into the sky becomes a bridge between the human and the divine. The men's songs are ancient, their words unchanged for countless generations. Through repetition, they summon the spirits, calling them to witness and bless the initiation. Each song carries the vibration of a sacred place, a waterhole, a mountain, a track of an ancestor. As the chanting continues, the line between human and spirit begins to blur. The initiates feel the world shift, the sound, the rhythm, the firelight merging into one heartbeat. Sometimes, the young men are painted with white clay or ochre, their bodies transformed into living canvases. The designs are not decoration, they are sacred maps. Each line and curve marks an ancestral journey, a story from the dreaming. When the elders paint them, they are not just adorning the body, they are inscribing identity. The paint binds the initiate to the land, sealing the invisible covenant between human and earth. Scarification, where it is practiced, holds similar meaning. Across parts of northern and central Australia, fine cuts are made on the chest, shoulders, or back, not as punishment, but as a declaration of strength and belonging. The scars are stories made visible. They are the language of endurance, each mark a reminder of the moment when a boy's body became a vessel for sacred law. When the wounds heal, they do not fade. They shine faintly under the skin, symbols of transformation that last a lifetime. The process of initiation can last weeks, months, even years. During this time, initiates live apart from the community, guided only by the elders. They learn songs, dances, and sacred stories that explain how the world came to be. They are taught about hunting, law, and the responsibilities of adulthood. They learn how to maintain the balance between humans and nature, to take only what is needed, and to give thanks in return. Each lesson is more than instruction. It is ritual in motion. Among the Walpri people, the teaching of Kuruwari, sacred patterns and designs, connects men to their ancestors. These designs, often carved into the sand during ceremony, represent the pathways of the dreaming beings. When drawn, sung, and danced, they awaken the land's memory, ensuring that its power continues to flow. The young men, through observing and imitating, learn to participate in this great work of renewal. The purpose of these ceremonies is not domination or hierarchy. It is alignment. Through initiation, a man learns his place in the grand web of existence. He becomes a link in the chain of generations, carrying forward the same wisdom once entrusted to his ancestors. The dreaming does not survive through writing, it survives through remembrance, through the human voice and the sacred fire that never goes out. Elders are the keepers of this flame. Their authority is not based on power, but on their depth of knowledge and spiritual maturity. They are living archives, each holding countless stories, songs, and laws. To become an elder is to embody the dreaming itself, to be both student and teacher, listener and lawgiver. During ceremonies, the elders do not simply speak, they recreate the world through sound and movement. The earth beneath their feet becomes the canvas of creation, and each dance a renewal of time itself. Anthropologists who studied Aboriginal initiation ceremonies often describe them as rites of passage, yet to the people themselves, they are more than that. They are a continuation of creation. They do not mark a change in social status alone. They reaffirm the living relationship between human, land, and spirit. The dreaming is not mythology in the Western sense. It is a living law that must be enacted to remain alive. When men gather around the fire and perform the old songs, they are not remembering the ancestors, they are being the ancestors, once again walking the first tracks of creation. This understanding gives the ceremonies profound weight. They are not optional cultural events. They are essential acts of cosmic maintenance. If they were to stop, it is said, the world itself would begin to unravel, rivers would dry, rains would cease, and the spirits would lose their path. Thus, every flicker of the ceremonial fire carries the responsibility of creation's survival. For outsiders, it can be difficult to comprehend the layered meanings within these rituals. What appears as simple chanting or dance often encodes entire systems of knowledge, geography, ecology, morality, and cosmology intertwined. The songs map the movement of stars, the migrations of animals, and the moral laws of behavior. They remind each generation of its duty, to care for the land, to protect its stories, and to live in balance with all beings. In this way, initiation is both education and transformation, a schooling of the soul as much as the mind. The ceremonies also forge deep bonds between the men. They create networks of kinship and mutual responsibility that extend across clans and generations. Every man who has stood before the fire shares in its light. They become part of an unbroken brotherhood, not defined by blood alone, but by shared law and experience. This collective identity is vital to the community's survival, ensuring cooperation and respect to the Aboriginal worldview. The fire itself is a teacher. It consumes, yet gives light, transforms, yet purifies. Its smoke rises to the sky, carrying prayers to the ancestors. Its heat binds those around it, forcing stillness, reflection, and humility. To tend the fire is to tend one's spirit, to keep it burning clean and steady. In this way, every ceremony becomes a mirror of the greater cosmos, where each human flame reflects the eternal fire of the dreaming. The elders often say that the flame in front of you is the same flame that burned in the beginning. When the first ancestors created the world, they lit the original fire, and through countless generations, that fire has never gone out. It passes from hand to hand, heart to heart, ceremony to ceremony. It is not the wood that burns, but the law itself. Through this sacred continuity, time folds in on itself. The present becomes the past, and the past lives again in the present. Even today, these traditions endure, though colonial disruption and mission life sought to suppress them. Many communities continue to hold their ceremonies in secret or revived form. In remote regions, fires still burn at night, and the voices of the elders still rise against the wind. Each ceremony is an act of survival, not just cultural, but spiritual. It is a reaffirmation that the dreaming has never died. It only waits for those who remember, for those who witness these rites. The atmosphere is unforgettable. The air hums with reverence. The scent of burning eucalyptus mixes with ochre dust. Stars glitter above like ancient eyes, and within the circle of light, humanity and eternity meet to reflections in the same flame. In the end, The men's ceremonies are about continuance, not the continuance of individuals, but of the sacred order that sustains all things. Each fire, each chant, each scar is a promise that the dreaming will not be forgotten, that the world will remain balanced, that the ancestors will always be honored. Chapter 14. The sacred silence between songs. When the chant ends, the world seems to pause. The fire flickers. The air holds its breath. In that quiet, something ancient stirs, not in words or melody, but in the stillness that lingers after them. Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, silence is not the absence of life. It is its hidden pulse. It is the moment when creation listens to itself. Every chant, every painted ritual, every sacred dance ends not in noise, but in a return to stillness. This silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, like the pause between heartbeats. For the first peoples, silence is a language. It speaks of reverence, of patience, of the slow rhythm of the land. It is the waiting between rains, the hush before dawn, the listening that precedes vision. In the dreaming, it is said that all things, animals, rocks, rivers, stars, were sung into being. But after the song, silence remained. The echo of that first sound became the invisible thread that binds creation, still, silence. In Aboriginal spirituality is not passive. It is an act of connection. To be still is to hear what is unseen, the ancestors moving beneath the soil, the spirits walking through shadowed valleys, the wind carrying names older than memory. When an elder pauses during story or ceremony, that silence itself is teaching. It reminds the listener that understanding cannot be rushed, that truth is not found in speech alone, but in the patient spaces between. Anthropologists who have lived with desert communities often describe long conversations marked by long pauses. To an outsider, it might seem uncomfortable, as though someone has forgotten to reply, but within Aboriginal communication, silence is a sign of respect. It allows the other person's spirit to catch up with their words. It honors what is being shared, letting meaning settle. Like dust after a journey, this sacred quiet extends beyond human speech. It is reflected in the landscape itself. In the desert, where the horizon stretches unbroken for miles, sound becomes precious. A single footstep, a bird's cry, a breath of wind, each enters the silence and disappears. The land listens, and those who walk upon it are reminded that the world is not always waiting to be filled with sound, but to be noticed. In certain women's ceremonies, songs are followed by long, deliberate silence. After chants of fertility and renewal, participants sit motionless, their faces turned toward the horizon. The silence here is sacred ground, the moment when the ritual's energy returns to the earth, to be absorbed and transformed. It is believed that this is when the ancestors listen most closely. The song may awaken them, but the silence invites them to respond. For the men, too, in their initiation fires, silence holds deep meaning. When a young man receives his markings or learns his dreaming story, he must remain quiet afterward, not out of fear, but reverence. He carries new knowledge, knowledge that cannot yet be spoken, only held. In that silence, the lessons of law and lineage settle into him. The quiet becomes his teacher. Silence also marks mourning. When someone passes away, there are periods where no name is spoken, no song is sung. This isn't denial. It is respect for the soul's journey through the unseen. The living withdraw from sound to allow the spirit free passage. To speak the name too soon would tether it to the world of form, interrupting its return to the ancestral realm. Across many Aboriginal nations, the land itself is treated as a being that listens. When people walk the land in silence, they are said to be listening to country, an act of awareness that goes beyond the ears. Listening to country is feeling the heartbeat beneath the soil, the flow of time beneath rock and root. It is to remember that the earth is conscious, and that speech is not the only way to commune. Some dreaming stories tell of the first silence, the void before creation's song began. This silence was the space of possibility, the canvas on which all things would emerge. When the ancestral beings sang, their voices rippled across this vast quiet, shaping mountains and rivers, stars and souls. Yet when they finished, they returned again to stillness. Because creation, to them, was never complete. It was always breathing in and out, sound and silence, rhythm and rest. To understand this silence is to recognize that not all truths can be spoken. The elders often say that words can point toward understanding, but never contain it. Meaning lives beyond the edge of speech, in the gesture, the breath, the waiting. And so, after each ceremony, there is a moment where everyone simply listens. No drum, no chant, no explanation, just the deep hum of the world continuing. In a modern sense, this lesson feels almost prophetic. In cities filled with constant sound, machines, voices, screens, silence has become something rare, almost feared. But to the old ones, silence was the most sacred teacher. It was how they remembered themselves. It was how they felt their place in the vast order of things. In silence, they could hear the dreaming still unfolding. Even now, when one truly listens to silence, it becomes clear that it is not empty. There is the pulse of insects, the movement of distant water, the faint rustle of the unseen. Every quiet moment holds traces of creation's original breath. And perhaps, in that recognition, lies the heart of Aboriginal spirituality itself. That existence is both sound and stillness, creation and rest, speech and listening. To sit in silence after ceremony is to sit within the dreaming. It is to share in the timeless rhythm of life's renewal. For the dreaming was never just a story told long ago. It continues in every breath, in every dawn, in every pause that lets the world realign. Even now, when one closes their eyes and listens, the sacred stillness remains a bridge between the human heart and the eternal song of the earth. Because when the chant ends, creation does not. It continues in silence, in the soft hum beneath all things. Perhaps that is the truest prayer of all. Not the sound itself, but the quiet that follows. Chapter 1:5 The spirits who guide the dying death in the oldest stories is not an ending. It is a soft return, a dissolving of form, a quiet unthreading of what was once tightly bound. Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, death is seen not as departure, but as a continuation of the dreaming, a sacred movement from one state of being into another. It is the journey home. In this worldview, life and death are not opposites. They are twin halves of the same sacred rhythm. Everything born from the land must one day return to it, for the land is both cradle and grave. When a person dies, they are said to rejoin the great dreaming ancestors, whose presence still hums beneath every tree, every stone, every gust of wind. The dreaming is eternal. It does not lie in the past, but moves through all time, past, present, and future at once. So when someone passes, they do not vanish into nothingness. They simply shift within the great web of being. Their body returns to the earth, their spirit to the dreamtime, and their name to memory. But even memory, here, is sacred. It is a living link, a song that keeps the departed within the circle of existence. When death approaches, it is believed that certain spirits arrive to guide the soul. These are not strangers or angels in a distant sense. They are kin, ancestral beings, totemic guardians, or the spirits of the land itself. Each person, throughout their life, carries an invisible connection to certain places and creatures, their dreaming path. It is along this same path that their spirit will travel back. In some Aboriginal traditions, the spirit is said to have two aspects. One belongs to the body; it breathes, eats, and dreams within human life. The other belongs to the eternal world, the unseen layer of the dreaming. At death, these two parts separate gently. The human aspect fades like a shadow at dusk, while the eternal one awakens and begins its journey home. The community plays a crucial role in this passage. When someone dies, the people gather to sing mourning songs. Yet these are not songs of despair. They are songs of remembrance, gratitude, and safe travel. They guide the spirit through the invisible pathways between worlds, calling to the ancestors who wait beyond the veil. The sound itself is sacred navigation, a map in vibration. It ensures that the spirit does not lose its way. Anthropologists who have witnessed traditional funerary rites often describe the atmosphere not as chaotic mourning, but as profoundly reverent. Silence and song alternate like breathing. The wailing is deep, but within it is rhythm. The rhythm of life returning to its source. There is grief, of course, for love has been severed from touch. But there is also acceptance, even beauty, because death, to them, is not a tragedy. It is the completion of a cycle that began long before birth. Each clan and region holds unique beliefs about the spirit's path after death. In Arnhem Land, some traditions speak of the spirit traveling across water, the sea, or a great river to reach its ancestral homeland. In desert communities, the spirit might journey through the Milky Way, the great celestial track that mirrors the dreaming paths below. The stars above are seen as campfires of the ancestors, glowing softly in welcome. There are also taboos surrounding death that express deep respect for the departed. Names are often avoided for a time. Photographs, recordings, or images may be set aside so that the spirit can move freely without being called back. This is not erasure, it is reverence. It allows the soul to complete its journey without confusion or lingering attachments. When the mourning period ends, the community may speak the person's name again, bringing their memory back into the world of the living with renewed peace. In some regions, special sorry camps are established. Families gather away from the usual settlement to mourn, to sing, to paint symbols of transition. These temporary camps are sacred spaces, thresholds between this world and the next. They mark the recognition that grief itself is a ceremony, an offering to the land and to the ancestors. When the rituals conclude, life resumes, but changed, because every death, no matter how familiar, reawakens the understanding that all life is borrowed. Guiding spirits, known by many names across different language groups, play a central role. They may take the form of an animal totem, a glowing presence, or a whisper in the wind. Often they are unseen but felt a warmth at the edge of sleep, a sudden calm amid sorrow. Elders teach that one should not fear them. They come in peace, with purpose, to accompany the soul back to its rightful home. In some dreaming stories, it is said that these spirits light fires along the spirit's path. Each flame is a marker, a point of recognition, a memory reignited. The soul moves from one to the next, guided by the familiar rhythm of its own story. When the final fire is reached, the spirit steps across into the timeless realm of the ancestors, where no pain remains and all songs continue. Burial practices, too, reflect this belief in sacred return. In northern Australia, it was common for the deceased to be placed on a raised platform until the body had completed its natural transformation. Later, the bones were collected, painted with ochre, and buried or kept in sacred caves. This second burial symbolized the spirit's final departure, the moment it had fully joined the dreaming. It was not a fearful act, but one of closure and reverence. Across Aboriginal Australia, the dead are never seen as gone. Their presence lingers in the land, the water, the fire. Their totem species may act differently for a time, a sign that the spirit is near. A bird circling unusually low, a sudden shift in the wind, a quiet in the forest, all are recognized as messages. The boundaries between the living and the dead are soft, porous, more like mist than stone. In modern times, many Aboriginal people blend these ancient beliefs with Christian faith. Yet the underlying worldview remains the idea that life is continuous, that the land itself holds memory. Funeral services may include both hymns and traditional songs, Bible verses and dreaming words. Even amid change, the central truth endures. No soul is left to wander alone. This view of death holds a profound lesson, one that speaks beyond its culture. It teaches that grief need not sever connection, that mourning can be both sorrow and celebration, that death, approached with reverence, restores balance rather than breaking it. It also invites reflection on what it means to belong, not just to a family, but to a living world that remembers us. If the land receives us in the end, then perhaps it has held us all along. Every footprint, every song, every whisper of wind carries something of those who came before. And in listening to the land, we hear not only the living, but the eternal conversation of all who have ever been. In the stillness that follows death, there is a silence unlike any other. It is not cold, it is not void. It is the gentle hush of the dreaming drawing the spirit near, a vast unseen embrace that asks nothing, forgives everything, and welcomes all. So when morning songs rise into the air, they are not farewells. They are the last thread of connection between worlds, gratitude set to melody. And when the final note fades, silence completes what song began. The land listens. It opens once more, and another spirit, weary but whole, returns to the dreaming, to the place where all journeys end, and yet where all things begin again. Chapter 16. Sky Country and the Stars that remember high above the silent desert. The sky unfolds like a memory. Each star glimmers not as a cold point of light, but as a living ancestor, a being watching from beyond, holding its place in the eternal story. For the first peoples of Australia, the night sky was never an empty vault. It was sky country, vast, sacred, and alive. In this worldview, the heavens were not detached from the land below. They mirrored one another, bound by songlines that stretched between earth and eternity. Every hill, every river, every firelit horizon had its reflection in the stars. When one looked upward at night, they were not merely gazing into distance, they were meeting the eyes of their elders. The constellations were not only patterns of light, but ancestral maps, teachings, written in the language of the cosmos for tens of thousands of years. Aboriginal cultures across the continent have looked to the sky as both calendar and scripture. It marked the seasons, guided travel, and preserved story. But beyond its practical role, the sky carried the memory of creation itself. Every constellation, every dark space between the stars, held meaning, a moment in the dreaming when the world was sung into being. One of the most profound of these stories is that of the emu in the sky. Unlike the constellations of Western astronomy, which are drawn from the bright stars, the emu is traced through the dark dust lanes that weave across the Milky Way. To the untrained eye, these appear as shadows, yet within Aboriginal knowledge, they reveal the body of a great cosmic emu stretching across the heavens. Its head lies near the Southern Cross, its long neck and body extending towards Scorpio in the central desert. The appearance of the emu at certain times of the year marks the nesting season for real emus on the ground. When its form stands clearly against the Milky Way in the early evening sky, people know it is time to collect eggs. Later, when the emu's shape fades, the nesting time has passed. Here, myth and ecology are not separate. The story carries survival knowledge, written in light. It is both science and spirituality, a reminder that all truth begins in relationship. Elsewhere, across Australia, different groups see other ancestral beings within the same sky. In the north, the Yoku people speak of Banamba, the morning star, a shining ancestor, who brought the first light to the world and still guides the spirits of the dead back to their homeland. Each morning, when Venus rises just before dawn, ceremonies are held to honor her journey. Songs are sung to ensure that the balance between the living and the ancestors endures. The Seven Sisters, known widely across Aboriginal Australia, form another ancient constellation, the Pleiades. Their story tells of 7 ancestral women who fled across the sky to escape a pursuer, a man whose spirit follows them eternally as the constellation of Orion. It is a tale shared in hundreds of variations across the continent, from the deserts of Western Australia to the coasts of New South Wales. And though the details shift, the essence remains, a story of love, danger, and cosmic pursuit, reflected in the movement of stars. This myth mirrors countless other chase stories found in cultures worldwide, from ancient Greece to the Americas. Yet, in the Aboriginal telling, it is not a metaphor, it is living history, written into the fabric of the cosmos. When the 7 sisters rise, they signal seasonal change, the flowering of plants, and the migrations of animals. They are both celestial drama and ecological guide to walk through the desert at night. Under such a sky is to feel the pulse of timelessness. The stars do not merely shine, they speak. They remind those who look up that they are part of an unbroken lineage stretching beyond memory. Every shimmer carries the presence of someone who once lived, sang, and dreamed upon this same earth. As elders often say, we come from the stars, and to the stars we return. Anthropologists who have studied Aboriginal astronomy are often astonished by its depth and precision. Star patterns were used to mark sacred locations, track animal migrations, and navigate vast distances across the continent. The Milky Way itself was seen as a river of spirit, carrying souls from the earthly realm to the land of the ancestors. In some traditions, the bright patch of the Coal-Sack Nebula, a dark cloud near the Southern Cross, is understood as a place of waiting, where spirits gather before entering the next world. Even time is read differently through this celestial understanding. In Aboriginal cosmology, the dreaming, or Jukopa, Ulcharinga, Wanga, depending on region and language, is not confined to the past. It is ongoing. The stars are not fossilized remnants of ancient creation. They are active participants in the living, dreaming. They continue to influence life, growth, and destiny. They are storytellers that never cease. When children are born, their spirits are believed to descend from particular stars or constellations. In some communities, elders determine which sky being or celestial path the child belongs to. That star becomes part of their identity, their connection to sky country. It is a birthright that defines how they must live, what songs they must learn, and which totems they will carry. And when they die, it is to that same region of the heavens that their spirit returns. The idea of sky country beautifully complements the understanding of earth country. Just as the land holds songlines, invisible roots connecting sacred sites, so too does the sky. Every star path above echoes a path below. The universe is therefore not distant or cold, but relational. The heavens are a reflection of life itself. To look up is to see one's own story told in light. For thousands of generations, people have gathered around campfires to tell these stories. They would lie on their backs, tracing the shapes of the ancestors with their hands, passing knowledge from elder to child. No books were needed. The stars themselves were the text, the night sky, the ever-present library of creation. When colonization arrived, many of these traditions were suppressed or dismissed as superstition. But despite displacement and loss, the stories endured, whispered in ceremony, painted in dot and line, and carried forward through memory. Today, Aboriginal astronomers and elders work together to revive and share this wisdom, bridging ancient cosmology with modern science. Through initiatives like T-White Seeing, both ways of knowing, the indigenous and the scientific, are brought together to enrich understanding of the universe. It is a reunion of ways of seeing, each confirming what the other has long known, that the cosmos is alive, interconnected, and deeply aware. Modern observatories built on Aboriginal land often consult with local elders to ensure that their operations respect the spiritual significance of sky country. Even in the language of modern astrophysics, a quiet reverence persists, a recognition that the night sky is not only matter and energy, but memory and meaning. In recent years, the emu in the sky and the morning star have inspired artists, astronomers, and storytellers alike, reminding all who listen that science and spirit need not be separate paths. There is something profoundly humbling in this view, to realize that when we look upward at the same stars that guided ancient travelers, we are not merely witnessing light from distant suns. We are entering a conversation that began long before humanity learned to speak. Each twinkle is a heartbeat from eternity. Each constellation is a story in motion, still unfolding, still teaching. The Aboriginal philosophy of sky country asks something simple yet transformative. What if we saw the night not as darkness, but as belonging? What if we remembered that every light above us has a voice, and that we, too, are part of that chorus? Because if every star is an ancestor, then the sky is not empty at all. It is full of presence, full of care, full of stories still being sung across millennia. And when the desert cools at night, and the Milky Way stretches overhead in its soft river of dust and brilliance, it feels as if the heavens themselves lean closer, whispering the old truths once more, that time is circular, that memory never dies, that to look up is to remember who we are. Sky country is not beyond reach. It is here, reflected in every flame, every reflection in the water, every act of reverence toward the living world. It waits quietly for those who will listen, who will lie still under the stars and let the silence between them speak. For in that silence, Something eternal stirs, a reminder that the universe itself remembers. And perhaps, as we look upward tonight, the stars are not only shining down on us, perhaps they are recognizing us too, their children, still walking beneath their ancient light. Chapter 17. When the land dreams through youth, dreaming is not a story of the past. It is a pulse, quiet, constant, and eternal. It moves through wind, through stone, through breath. And in the eyes of the first peoples of Australia, it moves through you to speak of the dreaming. Or Jukurpa is to speak of a world beyond time. It is creation and continuation at once, the law of existence itself. In Aboriginal philosophy, there is no single moment when the world began and then stopped. Creation is always happening. The ancestors did not simply make the world and vanish. They remain within it, dreaming through the living, guiding every rhythm of nature. The dreaming is thus both an origin and a presence, a way of being that shapes every breath of life. For outsiders, it can be difficult to translate. Anthropologists have tried, calling it myth, lore, spirituality, cosmology, yet each of those words captures only a fragment. The dreaming is not just belief, it is reality, lived and felt. It binds people to land, to ancestors, to each other. It holds memory, law, and morality in the same sacred thread. It teaches that every creature, every mountain, every river is alive with story. When Aboriginal elders speak of country, they do not mean a stretch of territory on a map. Country is a living being, conscious, feeling, and responsive. It is mother, teacher, and lawgiver. To walk upon the earth is to walk upon the body of an ancestor. The red soil, the trees, the winds, each carries spirit. To harm them carelessly is to harm oneself, for the boundary between person and place does not truly exist. To let the land dream through you, then, is to enter into relationship with it, to listen, not just look. It means slowing down until the hum of the earth can be heard again, until the patterns of bird flight, the rhythm of rain, and the silence between heartbeats begin to speak. In this way of seeing, the sacred is never separate from the ordinary. Lighting a fire, sharing food, or tracing footsteps across the sand, all are acts of connection. All expressions of the dreaming still unfolding across the vast continent. Each language group carries its own name for this continuous reality. Among the Anangu people of the Central Desert, it is Juka. For the Yoku of Arnhem Land, it is Wanga. In the Kimberley, it is Eng. The words differ, but their essence is shared, that life is an ongoing song, and humans are part of the choir. To forget this harmony is to lose one's place in the world. In Aboriginal lore, every person has a dreaming, a totem or ancestral identity that links them to particular creatures, plants, or forces of nature. Some are kangaroo people, others rain, or fire, or honey ant. This isn't symbolic. It defines one's role in the community and one's responsibility to care for the world. If your dreaming is water, you protect the rivers. If it is sun, you ensure the cycles of warmth and growth are honored. These aren't personal beliefs. They are obligations written into the structure of life itself. When an elder teaches a child their dreaming, it is a sacred initiation. The child learns where their spirit came from, which rock, hole, tree, or star their essence belongs to. That knowledge anchors them. It reminds them that they are never alone, that they exist within a network of being that stretches across generations and landscapes. Each action, each word, becomes part of the dreaming's continuation. This understanding shapes the way Aboriginal people relate to modern life as well. Even today, in cities and towns built upon ancient land, the dreaming is not gone. It breathes beneath concrete and steel. Ceremonies are still held. Songs are still sung. The connection to country endures, though often quietly, in the way one greets the dawn, the way one pauses before entering a sacred site, the way stories are retold so they never fade. In some communities, the dreaming is described as a kind of network, an invisible system of spiritual roots known as song. Each songline is a pathway first traveled by ancestral beings during creation. As they moved, their actions shaped the world, forming rivers, mountains, and plains. Their songs embedded meaning into the land, leaving a trail that can still be followed today. By singing these songs in the correct sequence, a person can navigate vast distances, knowing where to find water, where to rest, where to perform rituals. These songlines are both map and prayer, history and present moment, science and spirit. Imagine standing under a wide desert sky. The air is still. An elder begins to sing, their voice low and steady. Each note corresponds to a place on the horizon. As the song unfolds, the melody draws an invisible line through the landscape, connecting this rock to that hill, this valley to that spring. You begin to understand the song is not about the land. It is the land spoken in sound. And when you walk it, when you sing it, the land recognizes you. This is what it means to be dreamt by the earth. Not to own it, not to dominate it, but to let it move through you, to become a vessel for its remembering. The dreaming moves in all directions, backward, forward, inward, outward. It has no fixed past or future. It is cyclical, like breath. To be human, then, is to be part of the land's own exhalation, a momentary expression of its consciousness. Modern science speaks in similar rhythms, though with different language. Physicists describe the universe as energy vibrating in patterns, endlessly transforming yet never destroyed. Aboriginal knowledge has said the same, but through poetry instead of equations. Both recognize the continuity of all things, that nothing is truly lost, only changed. This parallel reveals how spiritual insight and empirical discovery can echo one another, each reflecting an aspect of a greater truth. Even as the modern world accelerates, with cities rising, machines humming, and screens glowing, the dreaming waits patiently beneath it all. It doesn't demand belief, it simply is. And those who slow down enough to notice it find themselves realigned, grounded again in the deep time of existence. Some Aboriginal philosophers describe this as deep listening. It means listening beyond words, beyond surface noise, into the essence of things. When practiced sincerely, Dadiri allows one to feel the land thinking through them, to sense wisdom that does not belong to the individual mind but to the collective heartbeat of creation. It is the art of silence as understanding today. Aboriginal communities continue to keep this wisdom alive, not as nostalgia but as guidance for survival. Environmental stewardship, respect for cycles, communal decision-making, all are rooted in the dreaming's teachings. Modern movements for ecological and cultural renewal often draw from this philosophy, recognizing that sustainability cannot exist without relationship. To heal the land, one must first remember how to hear it dream, yet the challenge remains. Can a modern society built on speed, ownership, and division remember how to listen? Can we, who have learned to measure time by clocks and profit, rediscover time as song? The dreaming invites this reflection, not as judgment, but as gentle reminder that we, too, are not outside the sacred order of things. We are participants in the same eternal rhythm. When you walk upon the earth, whether desert or forest, coast or mountain, the ground beneath you remembers. It holds the footsteps of ancestors and the whispers of those yet to come. Every breath of wind, every grain of soil carries the same truth, that the world is dreaming itself alive through you. If you close your eyes, you might feel it, the faint vibration beneath your ribs, the slow turning of the planet, the quiet exchange of air and thought between body and land. In that stillness, you may realize that the dreaming was never distant, never gone. It is here, flowing through your awareness like a tide. You do not need to find it. You only need to remember the elders say, "Walk softly." The land is listening. Perhaps that is the essence of all wisdom, not to conquer the world, but to move gently enough that the world can dream through you once more. Chapter 18. The Returning Spirits and Ancestral Footprints, an Aboriginal Thought. The line between life and death is not a wall. It is a doorway open, breathing, eternal. When a person passes, their spirit does not vanish into some distant realm. It returns, quietly, gently, like rain finding its way back to the earth. The spirit is not lost. It simply begins another journey, one that continues the story of creation itself, to the first peoples of Australia. Life is never separate from the dreaming. Birth and death, growth and decay are woven into a single living tapestry. Every being is a part of the land's ongoing memory, and that memory never fades. Instead, it changes form, becoming a child, a breeze, a bird, a star. When a baby is born, elders may watch carefully. They look for signs, a familiar gesture, a way of blinking, a softness in the eyes. They listen for a cry that carries an old rhythm. Sometimes, they say, an ancestor has returned. This belief is not framed as reincarnation in the Hindu or Buddhist sense, not as the migration of an isolated soul seeking release. It is something more relational, more communal. In Aboriginal cosmology, a person is not an individual spirit bound to a single body. They are a thread in the dreaming, a continuation of ancestral life expressed again in new form. The same ancestral essence flows through generations, sustaining the balance between the seen and unseen. When elders recognize an ancestor's return, it brings deep comfort. It reminds the community that life continues, that the dreaming never breaks. A new life carries old wisdom. An old story finds a new voice. The world, in this way, keeps remembering itself. Across many Aboriginal nations, there are sacred places where spirits are believed to wait between lives. These are not heavens or hells, but thresholds, resting points within the landscape where the soul pauses before returning. In the Northern Territory, some Yolku people speak of the Ngowuthan, the place where spirits prepare to re-enter the world through waterholes or sacred trees. Among the Arrernte, a child's spirit is said to come from particular sites known as dreaming places. These are not abstract ideas. They are exact locations, a rock, a spring, a hill where the spirit of a child is believed to dwell until the time of birth. When a woman walks through her country, she may feel a presence, a warmth near her belly, a stirring in the wind. That is the child spirit choosing to enter. Her pregnancy is not random or merely biological. It is a continuation of sacred geography. The child is not hers alone, but belongs to the land, to the ancestors. and to the community that will raise them. Anthropologists like W.E.H. Stanner and Deborah Bird Rose have noted that this way of understanding birth dissolves the Western separation between body, soul, and environment. There is no clear line where one begins and another ends. Instead, everything the spirit that once walked upon the land now becomes the land's new walker. The dreaming itself is the womb of all rebirth. This continuity explains why Aboriginal mourning rituals often blend grief with gratitude. When a loved one dies, the body returns to the soil, and the spirit travels along the songlines, retracing its path to the ancestral realm. For days, songs are sung, fires kept burning, and the person's name may be set aside for a time, allowing their essence to rest undisturbed. But beneath the sorrow lies a quiet knowing that the story is not over. The ancestor will one day walk again, perhaps nearby, perhaps in the face of a newborn child. The land will call them home. To Western eyes, this may seem like a mythic comfort, a poetic attempt to ease loss. But within the Aboriginal worldview, it is lived truth. Life and death are not opposite forces, but parts of the same flow, as inseparable as river and sea. When rain falls and soaks into the soil, it becomes part of the underground stream, which later rises again to feed the surface. The spirit, too, cycles through visible and invisible forms. It never leaves the system of life. In some regions, elders have specific ways of identifying returning spirits. A mark on the skin, a dream that announces a name, a vision seen by a relative before birth. In others, the spirit itself is believed to whisper through dreams, guiding the living to recognize it. A grandmother might dream of her deceased husband smiling beside a certain child, and from that night on, the child is understood as carrying his spirit. Such recognition shapes the child's place in the community, their totemic identity, and even their moral guidance. To belong to a returning ancestor means to inherit their responsibilities. If the ancestor was a healer, the child may grow up drawn to ceremony and medicine. If the ancestor was a storyteller, the child's words may carry unusual weight. In this way, the dreaming ensures that knowledge never dies. It is transmitted through blood, spirit, and place endlessly renewed through the pattern of life's return. There is an intimacy to this worldview that challenges modern notions of identity. It suggests the selfhood is not a single, contained thing, but a web of continuities. That the you who lives now is not an isolated consciousness, but a manifestation of something ancient and collective. To live well, then, is not merely to pursue individual fulfillment, but to honor the ancestral current flowing through one's being. This belief also offers a profound sense of ecological belonging. If the land itself births and receives the spirits of the people, then care for the land is care for the self. Polluting a river, scarring a mountain, or destroying a sacred site is not just environmental harm, it is spiritual interruption. It disturbs the pathways through which life returns. To preserve the environment is to keep open the channels of reincarnation, the arteries through which eternity breathes, even in communities touched by modernity, by cities, screens, and new religions. Echoes of this understanding remain. Families still tell stories of babies who carry the spirit of a late aunt, or of winds that whisper an ancestor's name. Elders still teach that the moment before dawn, when night and day meet, is when spirits move most freely. That hour of cool light, when the horizon glows softly, is when the world itself feels closest to remembering its endlessness, and perhaps, in a quieter way, All humans sense this. The feeling that a newborn's gaze holds an ageless knowing. The uncanny sense of déjà vu in a place you've never been. The warmth that brushes your face on a still afternoon, as though someone long gone just passed by. These moments of familiarity might be the echoes of that same truth, that the boundary between this life and the last is thinner than it seems. Aboriginal spirituality does not argue for immortality in the Western sense. It doesn't speak of escaping death or entering paradise. Instead, it teaches participation, that each person is part of the dreaming's endless renewal. You do not go somewhere else after death. You return here to the same sacred ground in another form, through another story. Heaven, in this view, is not above, it is beneath your feet. This understanding also reveals something about memory itself. The land remembers. The stones and rivers store the impressions of every step, every breath. When an ancestor returns, it is as though the land reawakens a familiar melody, playing it through a new instrument. Each human life is a verse in that eternal song. No verse is identical, but all belong to the same rhythm. In the heart of this belief lies a deep humility. Human life is precious, not because it stands apart from the world, but because it belongs entirely to it. Each person is both a guest and a guardian. Each birth is both a return and a promise. To walk the earth, then, is to trace the footprints of one's own spirit, to follow the tracks laid down in lives long before this one. When Aboriginal elders say, "The ancestors are always with us," they do not speak metaphorically. They mean it quite literally. They are the wind through the trees, the laughter of children, the light that gleams across the plains at dusk. They live in the cycles that never end, and when the time comes to leave this life, the spirit does not resist. It moves quietly into that larger rhythm, like a note dissolving back into music. It joins the dreaming again, waiting for the moment when it will rise once more, perhaps as a child's first breath, perhaps as the soft stirring of a breeze through familiar grass, because, in the dreaming, nothing is truly gone. Every footprint remains, faint but eternal. Every soul circles back, and every return, in child, in wind, in starlight, is the world remembering itself. Chapter 19 Songlines. As pathways of memory cross the vast expanse of Australia, stretching from red deserts to coastal plains, lies a network of invisible trails known to Aboriginal peoples as song. To an untrained eye, the land may appear empty, wide and silent, ancient and still. But to those who carry the old songs, the land is alive with memory. Every hill, every bend in a river, every rock formation hums with story. And when the right song is sung, the country itself awakens. Songlines, sometimes called dreaming tracks, are not simply paths across geography. They are living maps, musical corridors that weave through physical and spiritual worlds alike. Each songline records the journey of an ancestral being who once crossed the land during the dreaming, shaping mountains, watering holes, and creatures as they moved. Their footsteps became geography, their actions became law, their memory became melody. To sing these songs is to remember creation itself. Every verse is a coordinate, every rhythm a direction. For countless generations, Aboriginal travelers navigated entire continents by singing. They could journey from one end of the country to another, guided not by compasses or stars alone, but by melody and word. In the cadence of their chants lay the contours of the land, the curve of the ridges, the depth of a valley, the direction to a hidden spring. Each note, Each syllable carried both spiritual and practical truth. Among the Arrernte people of Central Australia, it is said that the ancestors sang the world into being. As they moved, their songs brought form to the landscape, fixing its features into existence. For the Warlpiri, these ancestral journeys continue to exist in parallel, still resonating through the land and through those who sing them. When a person sings the songline, they are not merely recalling history, they are participating in creation itself. The act of singing keeps the world alive. Anthropologists like Bruce Chatwin and Deborah Birdrose have described songlines as both geography and theology, a sacred cartography that blends navigation with worship. But even these words fall short. To Aboriginal people, songlines are not metaphors. They are real. They are lore, land, and lineage made audible. Imagine walking through a vast stretch of desert. The horizon ripples with heat, and there are no markers, no signs. Yet, an elder begins to hum a low, steady tone that shifts with each dune and stone. The song tells where to find water, where to rest, where danger lies. It reminds who once walked here, which ancestral being shaped this soil, which creature's spirit dwells in this place. By following the song, the traveler follows the land's memory. In Aboriginal tradition, knowledge is layered. The same song might hold different meanings depending on who hears it. For children, it might be a story about animals or sky heroes. For initiated adults, it reveals moral law and ceremonial wisdom. And for the elders, the song's custodians, it contains the deepest cosmological truths, how the universe was sung into motion, and how it must be sustained. Each clan, each language group, holds responsibility for certain segments of these songlines. They must keep them alive through performance, teaching, and ceremony. A songline might pass through dozens of territories, each cared for by different groups who all know their own verses. When communities meet at sacred sites, they exchange parts of these songs, reaffirming the continuity of the dreaming across distance and time. Through this sharing, the continent itself becomes one grand, interconnected hymn. This oral map predates written language, yet it functions with astonishing precision. Studies have shown that many songlines align with real geological and navigational features, river systems, mountain chains, seasonal waterholes. The melodies rise and fall with the shape of the terrain, encoding geography into rhythm. By remembering the music, travelers remember the way. In this sense, the landscape itself becomes a library, and the people its readers. But songlines are more than routes of travel. They are roots of belonging. They bind human memory to the earth's body. Each time a songline is sung, it reaffirms the unity between people, ancestors, and land. To forget a songline is not simply to lose a story. It is to let a part of the world fade into silence. Elders often speak of singing the land back to life after periods of neglect, drought, or conflict. When the songs are performed again, the country breathes easier. The earth remembers who it is. In this worldview, sound itself holds sacred power. To sing is to act. To name is to shape. This understanding echoes through many of the world's creation traditions. The word of Genesis, the Om of Hinduism, the chants of Sumer and Egypt. But in Aboriginal cosmology, it is not an ancient myth to be recalled. It is a daily duty. Each sunrise calls for the renewal of that first singing. The dreaming, after all, is not past. It is ongoing. When the colonial world arrived, with fences, railroads, and maps drawn by foreign hands, It did not see these songlines. It saw only unclaimed wilderness. But to the Aboriginal mind, every line of that wilderness was already marked, named, sung. Every valley was someone's verse. Every hill, someone's ancestor's resting place. To overwrite those songs with borders was not just to seize land, it was to interrupt the world's sacred rhythm. Yet, despite centuries of suppression, many songlines endure. Elders still carry them in memory, in dance, in ceremony. Some are whispered softly now, shared only in private. Others are being revived through community projects, where youth learn to retrace the old paths, recording them in both song and digital form. Technology, once seen as a force of erasure, is now being used to preserve. The ancient melodies continue, reshaped but not broken. What makes songlines extraordinary is their fusion of art and environment, of story and science. They encode astronomical knowledge, linking certain verses with the appearance of stars, seasons, or migrations of animals. They track time, weather, and social law in ways that sustain civilizations for tens of thousands of years. To walk and sing was to engage in both navigation and ceremony. Every journey was both pilgrimage and performance, and there is something profoundly human about that. The instinct to remember through rhythm, to map the world through meaning. Even today, people hum to themselves as they travel, syncing their steps to sound. Some part of us, it seems, still carries that ancient awareness that sound and motion can reveal direction, that music can guide us home. In reflecting on one begins to see that the Aboriginal world is not built on ownership but relationship. The land is not a possession. It is a relative, a teacher, a living archive. By singing to it, people renew their part in the conversation of creation. It is an act of gratitude and care, not command. The songs remind humans that they belong to the land, not the other way around. At its heart, a songline is memory in motion. It is history that breathes, knowledge that walks. Every time a verse is sung, it bridges past and present, making eternity audible. It reminds that the world was not made once, long ago. It is being made still. With every step that honors the old paths, and perhaps, in listening to wind move through trees or the soft echo of one's own footsteps, we hear faint traces of that truth, that every place we stand has been walked before, that the earth holds songs older than our speech, waiting to be remembered, that the path beneath us is never just ground, it is memory, humming quietly, guiding the way home. Chapter 20. The Healing Songs and Sacred Smoking, the heart of the world's oldest living culture. Healing was never a separate act. It was part of living, breathing, and belonging. Among Aboriginal peoples of Australia, to heal meant to remember harmony, to return to alignment with the rhythm of land, spirit, and community. When something fell out of balance, a sickness, a sorrow, a broken relationship, the elders called upon the old ways, the songs, the smoke, the soft dance of renewal. Healing ceremonies took place beneath open skies, near sacred waterholes, or within the glow of a communal fire. There, the healer, sometimes called the Ngonkaree in central desert regions, or clever man in others, would begin by invoking the unseen powers that live between earth and sky. Their knowledge was not written in books, but carried in breath, rhythm, and inheritance. Passed down through generations of apprentices, it was a sacred trust, part medical, part spiritual, and entirely relational. Smoke, in particular, played a vital role. Branches of eucalyptus, wattle, and paperbark, were placed upon glowing embers. As the leaves burned, a soft fragrance rose, a mixture of sharpness and sweetness. That smoke was not merely a scent, it was communication. It carried prayers into the air, cleansing the space and the people within it. Participants would move through the drifting vapors, allowing it to touch their skin, their hair, their spirit. They believed that the smoke opened invisible pathways, releasing tension, dispersing darkness, and reuniting the person with the energies of the land. To the Western observer, this might appear symbolic, but to Aboriginal cosmology, it is literal. Everything in the universe, body, wind, stone, thought, holds a vibration. When one's vibration falls out of tune with the country, disease arises. The smoke, the chant, the drum, all are instruments of healing. Then is not about removing illness. It is about remembering the song of balance. The Ngangkari often sang as they worked. Their songs were ancient, taught in dreams or inherited through lineage. Each note corresponded to a story, a law, a memory of creation. Some songs called upon ancestral spirits to guide the hands of the healer. Others directed energy through the body, locating what was out of place. These were not random melodies. They were precise, powerful technologies of sound. They reconnected the sick person to their dreaming, their identity, their place within the larger pattern. In this worldview, body, mind, and land are not separate. A wound on one is a wound upon all. If someone grew ill, it was often said that they had forgotten their song, or that a part of their spirit had wandered away. The healer's task was to help it return. Through touch, smoke, and chant, they invited the missing piece back home. Across the continent, healing ceremonies varied. In Arnhem Land, women might lead healing dances accompanied by rhythmic clapsticks, their movements echoing the gestures of ancestral beings. In the Central Desert, healers performed extraction rituals, removing harmful energies and casting them into the earth to be cleansed. Along coastal regions, ochre, a sacred pigment drawn from the soil, was applied to the skin in patterns of protection and restoration. Each color of ochre held meaning: red for the life force of blood and earth, yellow for the sun, white for the spirits, black for night and renewal. To mark the body in ochre was to inscribe it once again into the dreaming, to remind both person and cosmos of their mutual belonging. Anthropological accounts from the early 20th century described these healers as intuitive psychologists, energy workers, and herbalists all at once. They understood the medicinal value of plants and the emotional weight of ritual. They knew how grief could manifest in the body, how fear could alter breath. Their healing addressed not just symptoms, but the story behind them. And that story always led back to the land, to the sacred relationship between self and place, to live in harmony. The old people said, one must sing the country, and when a person forgot their song, the land itself began to feel the absence. Healing ceremonies, then, were not private matters. They were communal acts of restoration. When one person healed, the circle healed. When the smoke rose, it was not for one soul, but for all creation. The Ngangkari were also known to work with what they called karumpa, the spirit or life essence that flows through all beings. If someone's karumpa was disturbed, they might experience confusion, sickness, or misfortune. The healer, using both hands and song, could sense where the karumpa was blocked or weakened. They might draw out harmful energies, using breath and movement to cast them away. At times, they used a special stone or crystal believed to contain ancestral power. The act was not performed with spectacle, but with deep concentration and humility, a dialogue between human and unseen. Western medicine, though often skeptical of such practices, has begun to recognize their psychological and communal benefits. Studies in recent decades show that traditional healing ceremonies support emotional regulation, trauma recovery, and social cohesion. The rhythmic sound, the shared space, the sensory elements of smoke and song all engage the nervous system, restoring calm and connection. But for Aboriginal people, these benefits are not the goal. They are the natural result of alignment with law, the spiritual law of balance, reciprocity, and care. The use of sacred smoke continues in modern Australia. It is seen at community events, reconciliation ceremonies, and even hospitals. When smoke drifts through the air, it carries both ancient memory and present hope. The same plants burned thousands of years ago now cleanse new spaces, cities, classrooms, parliaments, reconnecting them, however briefly, to the spirit of country. There is beauty in this endurance, a continuity that refuses to break, even after colonization sought to silence the songs and banish the healers. Many Ngongkari were persecuted, labeled as sorcerers or deceivers by missionaries and officials. Yet the knowledge persisted, hidden in families, whispered in ceremony, remembered in dreams. Today, Aboriginal healers continue to practice, working alongside doctors and nurses, offering spiritual care to those who seek it. They remind the world that healing does not belong to the laboratory alone. It belongs also to the wind, the fire, and the voice. Imagine, for a moment, the scene at dusk. A small fire glows in the distance. The smell of eucalyptus drifts through the cool air. An elder hums softly, eyes closed, hands tracing unseen patterns in the smoke. Children sit quietly nearby, learning through watching. The land grows still, listening. Somewhere, beyond what can be measured, the balance shifts, gently, invisibly, back toward harmony. This is not magic in the way the modern world defines it. It is relationship. It is gratitude made audible. It is the understanding that every breath interacts with the sacred field of life around it. When the old songs are sung, when the smoke rises, the human world and the spirit world meet, not as strangers, but as kin. Healing, in this sense, is an act of remembrance. It is remembering that the same elements that sustain life, earth, air, fire, water, also sustain peace within. It is remembering that the body is part of the landscape, that the soul moves in rhythm with the wind. When people forget this, imbalance grows. When they remember, harmony returns, softly, like a familiar melody finding its way home. And perhaps that is the greatest medicine of all. Not a cure that ends suffering, but a song that restores meaning. For in every language, in every culture, there lies a truth older than any religion or science, that to heal is to reconnect, to breathe with the earth again, to feel the warmth of sacred smoke curling through twilight, and know even for a moment that you are part of something whole. Chapter 21. Echoes of the Old Voices. Across the vast red earth of Australia, there are places where the air still seems to hum with stories. Not the kind told in words, but the kind that move beneath them. Quiet vibrations drifting through stone, soil, and sky. These are the echoes of the old voices, the ancient songs that once shaped the rhythm of creation and, in some ways, still do. For the Aboriginal peoples, language was never just a tool for communication. It was life itself, a bridge between human and land, body and spirit, time and eternity. Each word carried not only meaning but lineage. Each sound was a fragment of the dreaming, a living thread spun from the first ancestors who sang the world into being. But centuries of colonization, missionization, and forced assimilation fractured that sound. Languages that had endured for tens of thousands of years began to fall silent. Songs once sung beside sacred fires, beneath constellations known since the beginning, faded into memory. Yet the silence was never complete. Beneath the quiet, something remained, a pulse, waiting for breath. The old voices persisted, even as entire clans were displaced from their lands. Some carried the sound of their ancestors in their hearts. Grandmothers whispered names of rivers, mountains, and spirits to children as they slept. Elders recalled fragments of ceremonial chants long forbidden by colonial rule. Those fragments, syllables, cadences, ancient intonations, became seeds of remembrance. And today, across Australia, many of those seeds are beginning to grow once more. There are more than 250 distinct Aboriginal languages, each with its own dialects and sacred patterns of speech. Some of these have been lost entirely. Others survive only through songlines, the sung maps of the dreaming that describe how ancestral beings traveled the landscape, creating rivers, hills, and stars as they moved. The songlines are not myths in the Western sense. They are navigation, scripture, and memory fused into one. To sing them is to keep the land alive. Anthropologists once described Aboriginal oral traditions as fragile, vulnerable to the erosion of time. But this was a misunderstanding. These traditions were not fragile. They were living, evolving. A story told by the fire at night was never meant to remain frozen. It moved like water, adjusting to the contours of each generation. Through this adaptability, truth endured even when the surface changed. The loss that came with colonization was immense, not only of land, but of language, ceremony, and belonging. Children taken to missions were punished for speaking their mother tongues. Songs were outlawed, instruments destroyed. But even then, the spirit of the old voices continued in the hidden ways, in rhythmic clapping disguised as play, in melodic hums that slipped into lullabies, in paintings that echoed the same patterns of the old chants. Culture survived because memory found 1,000 ways to live today. The revival of these languages and songs is more than preservation, it is renewal. Communities across the continent are recording elders' voices, reawakening vocabularies once considered extinct, and teaching the young to speak words that haven't been spoken in generations. When a word returns, so too does the world it describes, in the Yawuru language of Western Australia. For instance, the word Leon refers not just to feeling, but to the deep, intuitive sense of spiritual harmony with the world. In Pajanchitiara, the word Jukupa holds layers of meaning, lore, story, dreaming, creation, all bound into one. Each term reveals a worldview where spirit and reality are inseparable. When these languages fade, the universe they describe begins to fade too. But when they return, the old rhythm stirs again. The land recognizes its own name, and something ancient responds. Across the Northern Territory and Queensland, elders have begun hosting language camps. Children gather beneath open skies to learn the words of their ancestors from those who still remember. These sessions often end in song, the same chants that once guided hunters, healers, and dreamers. It is said that when those songs are sung again, the spirits of the ancestors rise to listen. In some communities, the revival goes beyond sound. Artists inscribe the old words into paintings and weavings. Dancers embody them in ritual movements once suppressed. Every act becomes both an offering and a restoration. There is something profoundly spiritual in the act of remembering. To recall a language is to reawaken relationships between humans and animals, seasons and skies, mountains and memory. Aboriginal knowledge systems do not see the past as gone. They see it as folded within the present, always accessible through story, place, and ritual. So when a word returns, it is not resurrected, it was merely sleeping. The anthropologist Deborah Bird Rose once wrote that Aboriginal storytelling is not about history, but about life continuing. The dreaming, she said, is a moral and ecological order of the world. To listen to the old voices, then, is to listen to the law of balance itself, a reminder of how to live with the earth, not against it. Modern life, with its noise and constant movement, often leaves little room for such listening. But in the quiet stretches of desert, or along the still banks of a billabong, one might still feel it, the subtle hum of presence, the whisper that runs through trees, stones, and wind. To the untrained ear, it may sound like silence. To those who know, it is the language of the land speaking back. Some say the ancestors speak most clearly at dawn and dusk, when the boundaries between worlds are thin. In those moments, even the smallest sound, a bird's cry, a gust of wind, the call of a distant dingo, can feel like part of a greater conversation. The old voices are not just echoes from the past. They are reminders that knowledge can never truly die if it is carried in the heart. They are the hum beneath existence, waiting for those who will pause long enough to listen. Perhaps that is the true purpose of the dreaming, not to preserve old myths for memory's sake, but to remind every generation of its role in the ongoing story of creation. Every song revived, every language spoken again, every name remembered. These are acts of continuity, of healing, of quiet defiance against forgetting. And so, even as centuries pass and empires fall, the ancient pulse continues. It may shift its rhythm, take new forms, or hide beneath layers of silence, but it endures. Maybe the world itself is made of echoes, waves that never truly end, only soften with distance. Maybe when we listen closely enough, we hear not only what once was, but what still is, because somewhere, deep within the wind and dust, the ancestors are still speaking. They have never stopped. They are waiting, patiently, for us to remember how to hear them again. The land still dreams as night deepens across the endless landscapes of Australia. There is a hush that falls over the land. The stars, once brilliant and close, begin to fade with the first light of dawn, yet the song remains. It lingers not only in the air, but in the spaces between, in the soil, the stones, the stillness of rivers and deserts. The dreaming, that ancient web of stories, songs and spirits, continues quietly, unbroken, and eternal. For millennia, Aboriginal peoples have understood that the land itself is alive, not as a collection of objects, but as a vast, sentient presence. Mountains, trees, and waterholes are not inert. They are parts of a living story that stretches back to the beginning of time. And as long as this story is sung, told, or remembered, the dreaming breathes through it. Even when voices are hushed, the memory of the song persists, waiting for ears attuned to listen. The dreaming is not confined to history. It is not a relic locked in the past. It is an ongoing reality, present in every heartbeat that moves with awareness of the land. When one walks softly, attentive to the rustle of leaves, the shimmer of water, the call of distant birds, one steps into the same rhythm that ancestors have walked for tens of thousands of years. Every footprint becomes a verse, every pause a breath of the world remembering itself. In the stories of the dreaming ancestors shaped rivers, carved out mountains, and traced the paths of the stars. They sang these changes into existence, teaching law, culture, and morality through song. Those songs were never meant to be mere performance. They were maps, guides, and records. And though time and disruption have challenged their continuity, they remain hidden or remembered, like sparks waiting to ignite again, even today. In towns, schools, and remote communities, these ancient melodies quietly persist. Elders teach children the names of sacred sites, the rhythms of ceremonial dances, the meaning of ochre markings. Language is restored, songs are relearned, and the connection to country is reaffirmed. Each revival is a testimony to resilience, a reminder that the dreaming cannot be erased. It simply waits for the patient, attentive listener. And so, the land dreams through those who remain present. In silence, in contemplation, in the act of walking, seeing, and listening, one participates in an ancient dialogue. The dreaming is not only preserved, it is enacted anew in each conscious moment. This is the profound lesson carried in every whisper of wind across the desert, in every ripple along a river, in every quiet pause of the day. Perhaps this is why the night itself seems alive. When you drift into sleep, there is a subtle resonance beneath the ordinary hum of life. The dreaming moves through that stillness, carrying lessons of patience, of interconnection, of respect. The stars may fade from view, but the stories remain, echoing softly, weaving the living present with the vast memory of the past. To witness this is to understand that time is not linear but circular, like the flow of songlines across the continent. The stories of the dreaming are not constrained to a beginning or an end. They fold into the moments of now, carrying with them the wisdom of ancestors and the continuity of creation itself. Each breath, each step, each quiet thought can be an entry into that timeless web, even as the world outside hums with modern distractions. There is a place of stillness where the land speaks, where the ancient pulse continues. It is subtle, but it is always there in the rustling leaves, the shifting sands, the quiet sigh of the wind. To attune to it is not to escape reality, but to deepen one's awareness of it. The dreaming is not separate from life. It is life itself, seen and felt through the attentive mind and open heart. As dawn edges the horizon with its soft golden light, the dreaming does not end. It transforms, continues, and persists beneath all things. In that moment between night and day, there is a clarity that invites reflection. The stories, songs, and rhythms of the land are still alive, flowing quietly beneath every footstep, waiting for the recognition of those who will see and listen. And perhaps, in that gentle awareness, one understands a truth older than any human memory, that the land itself dreams. And in that dreaming, there is a continuity that transcends time, a whisper of eternity that speaks through silence, through memory, and through every listener who carries a piece of it in their own mind. The stars may fade, the winds may change, and the surface of the world may alter, but the dreaming remains. It is soft, endless, awake within stillness, and present wherever the heart opens to hear it. The land still dreams, And in that dreaming, so do we, gently, quietly, and without end.